Oh, are we back?
We're back.
We're back.
Just double check by refreshing. We're back.
Yay! I'm back. I don't know exactly when that happened. I knew as soon as I said I was grabbing pie, y'all would return. Hey, it's... the webmancers, the webomancers, whatever they're called. The magic I don't understand about computer. The technomancers, that's the one. Are not under my control. You Imagineers running arrows were on a smoke break. No, it's getting very dangerously close to so Disney invented VTubers. Fuck it. All right. Watch party continues in 3, 2, 1. Start.
His fins, scoot around, burn. Look at him go. Also, while we're here, I wanted to share this diagram of how I think the guy gets in and out of there. See, there's a little ridge here, and I think Nemo's body opens so you can crawl in and drive him around. If you drove Nemo, please email me at idrovenemo@defunctland.com to confirm. Okay, thank you. The roaming Nemo character probably did not come out of Imagineering, and more likely was created by
I
the
went back a
Parks
little
Live
bit because I'm
Entertainment
not sure
Division,
when we
which
last
was responsible for
when
parades.
we actually started
Imagineering
cutting
was
out.
showing interest in the Finding Nemo characters, and their uniqueness as sea creatures actually benefited a few projects already in development. When Finding Nemo was released, Imagineer Joe Garlington was still working on Mickey's Toon Elevator for Tokyo Disney Sea, and he and his team were realizing the difficulty of translating the virtual puppetry format into a fully realized attraction. It was determined that to achieve a reasonable capacity, 12 to 16 identical interaction rooms would need to be created, each of which would need to be operated by an actor. This meant that a roster of around 40 puppeteers would be required to keep the attraction operating all day, every day.
That's a
This
lot
was
of
simply
people.
not realistic, so Garlington considered a workaround, a new method that he referred to as a pseudo-living character, an interactive character that was controlled by a live operator but not voiced by one. This would allow any cast member to be able to operate the room with simple controls that could initiate story beats and trigger pre-recorded dialogue. While the elevator
he's
concept would
animator
remain,
versus
the idea of
animationing.
the attraction starring Mickey was abandoned, for many of the same reasons that the original Toon Elevator team had moved on to Stitch. Garlington considered using the clumsy Goofy, whose personality was better equipped for the cartoony chaos of the elevator. While the main interaction would be a pseudo-living character, Garlington felt that he needed at least one true living character to sell the attraction, choosing to place a virtual puppeteer in the pre-show. Given Disney Sea and the SS Columbia's nautical theming, Imagineers considered a sea creature, and after the success of Finding Nemo, they had plenty of recognizable, charismatic ocean animals to choose from. The Imagineers honed in on Crush, the 150-year-old sea turtle known for his laid-back nature. Like Stitch, Crush was the perfect fit for a living character. For one, his voice was easy to perform. Unlike Finding Nemo's main characters, who were voiced by famous comedians such as Albert Brooks and Ellen DeGeneres, Crush was voiced by the film's
Ellen
director,
DeSelfish.
Andrew Stanton. Stanton's laid-back performance was easily mimicked, even more so than Stitch.
First you were all like, whoa, and then we were like, whoa, and then you were like, whoa.
On top of this, Crush had limited screen time in the film, which would give Imagineers and the puppeteers much more freedom, as there was less source material to contradict. Like Stitch, Crush was always moving, doing barrel rolls and flipping, making him appear more alive and active when animated. Finally, Crush's chill attitude allowed him to better control an interaction and shift between topics, as he was not expected to be as attentive and engaged as a character like Mickey. Garlington and his team pitched their living character attraction to the Oriental
Do you think
Land
they have
Company,
issues
but
when
for
like the
whatever
TV
reason,
shows come out and
management
more
did not
lore
greenlight the
gets
concept.
dropped?
This did not dissuade Garlington from continuing to develop the attraction, particularly the virtual puppetry element with Crush. Luckily, a new avenue for the living character had formed. In late 2003, rumors began to circulate
one
that
watches
the Living
those.
Seas
Hey!
Pavilion at Epcot would receive a
Hey, we
retheme to
respect the
incorporate
Emperor's New
characters
School
from
here.
Finding Nemo. This type of redressing of existing infrastructure
Which I heard
was
is
common
being,
for Disney in this period, as the parks dealt with
reshown?
underutilized attraction spaces that Imagineers were given limited budgets to refurbish. Executives hoped that the retheme would increase attendance at the Living Seas and satiate the demand for the Finding Nemo characters. A key part of the refurbishment that would not be a simple overlay would be Garlington's virtual puppetry attraction starring Crush, which was greenlit and given its own theater space. Set to occupy one of the Living Sea's lower floor modules, the Imagineers installed a large 8-foot by 16-foot screen, designing it to look like observational glass looking into the aquarium. The circular theater could fit around 120 people, and space was left in the front of the room so that the children could sit on the floor at the foot of the screen. The new interactive attraction began playtesting in the Living Seas in late 2004, before officially opening to guests on November 16th under the name Turtle Talk with Crush. After guests took their seats in the theater, a cast member would point out the hydrophone in the digital tank, explaining that it allows humans to communicate with the creatures of the living seas. The guests were encouraged to call for Crush, who would come flying into view.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Righteous, whoa, awesome. Check out the 360 on the invert float. Tubular.
Crush would interact live with guests for about 10 minutes. The puppeteers were trained to begin the show by having Crush call on one of the children, typically by pointing out the color of their shirt, which he referred to as their shell.
Gonna start with this dude right here in the short sleeve orange shell. Yeah, what's your name, little dude?
Matthew.
Matthew, excellent.
The cast member in the room went up to each person Crush singled out and held
That's
a
really
microphone
cool,
so that they could
too.
speak with the character. As predicted, Crush was a perfect choice for the attraction. From a personality perspective, he was funny, relaxed, and had plenty of catchphrases to lean on.
He said, "What up, dude? Give me some fin." Dude's funny. And he also told us that we needed to say dude for the rest of the day.
One of the biggest hurdles Imagineers faced was determining what Crush could know and what he could not know. Stitch had a good understanding of the human world, but Crush had no knowledge outside of the few foreign objects.
Hey,
that made
Crush,
their way
how many
into the
genders
ocean.
are there?
This actually helped with the comedy, because Crush, being ignorant to many of the topics that children brought up, consistently got laughs.
And we found this human artifact. I have no idea what it is, dude. Why are you dudes laughing? Who knows what this is? Well, do you have one of these, dude?
No.
Well, why not?
Those are for girls.
Crush often discussed his relationship with his son Squirt, endearing him to family audiences and allowing him to impart parental wisdom. To tie into the theme of the living seas, Crush had several facts about the ocean at the ready, and he often ended the show with an ecological
Crush is an
message in
anti-vaxxer
support of
for
caring for the
sure.
Earth's oceans.
Because fish are not. Good to know DVD sales are up. Excellent.
From an animation perspective, Crush works similarly to Stitch. To add more life to the character, Garlington and his team gave Crush what they refer to as Dead Man's animations, also known as idle animations, which kept Crush constantly moving, even when the puppeteer was not activating any movement.
I wonder how they
Imagineers had
puppeteer
planned on
this.
Crush interacting with other
Like-
characters from Finding Nemo, but Pixar was too busy working on The Incredibles to contribute assets before the attraction's opening. A few months after its debut, Turtle Talk was updated to include more characters, including a scripted finale with a pre-recorded and pre-animated Dory. Turtle Talk was an overwhelming success for Disney. Audiences of all ages found the attraction fun and engaging. Children were enraptured by seeing Crush live and in person, and parents were equally amazed, trying to figure out how the trick was pulled off. Many incorrect guesses that appeared during this time included voice changers, face tracking, and even artificial intelligence. But the truth was much simpler, a testament to the Imagineers and the puppeteers. The attraction had over 10 times the capacity as Stitch's picture phone, with Crush able to entertain around 600 guests per hour. There was a certain personal element lost by staging the attraction as a theater show rather than a one-on-one interaction, but this was a necessary loss to handle crowds. Still, Turtle Talk was a modest show with a low throughput compared to other attractions. This did not stop Disney from marketing the attraction widely, and this, combined with strong word of mouth, resulted in Turtle Talk with Crush clogging the previously barren living seas. The attraction did not have dedicated queue space, so temporary switchbacks were set up throughout the main floor of the aquarium. It was apparent that Crush was so immensely popular that he needed a larger theater with more infrastructure. The show soon moved to one of the Living Seas' original pre-show theaters, and guests were routed through one of the pavilion's larger modules, granting it a pre-show corral to help handle the crowds. Turtle Talk's first location was given a few fish tanks, with the original screen remaining in place and displaying a looping animation of an empty tank. Guests felt that Turtle Talk with Crush had captured Disney's quintessential magic at a time when the company was seen as cheap and creatively stagnant. The The attraction was unique for a theater-style show, in that each performance was different based on the puppeteer and the guest
I
interactions.
can't wait for them to
This
come back
resulted
to
in Turtle
robots
Talk
with
having
this
a
somehow.
significantly higher return rate than other theater shows at the parks. And the best part, from Disney's perspective, it was cheap. While Turtle Talk took its fair share of time and money to develop, now that it existed, the cost of building additional shows was nominal. And since many Disney parks were in desperate, immediate need of new attractions, Turtle Talk was well positioned to be cloned. Just 7 months after the original version opened in the Living Seas, the struggling Disney's California Adventure received a version of its own in the Animation Building, replacing the Animation Screening Room. This was a ridiculously simple retheme, taking a poorly attended theater and immediately giving it an attraction that dazzled guests. This caused the virtual puppetry format to spread rapidly. On September 12, 2005, the 5th Disney resort, Hong Kong Disneyland, held its grand opening. The project had suffered greatly from the same cost-cutting and lowering of standards that had plagued the entire parks division, and the new Hong Kong resort had very few offerings upon opening. To make up for this, Disney searched for fixes that were both quick and cheap, and living characters were the go-to choice. Lucky the dinosaur, who was regularly appearing in Dinoland at Disney's Animal Kingdom, was quickly shipped off to Hong Kong, where he would greet guests in a far less thematically appropriate setting. A new Push the Talking Trash Can was also created to intercept guests as they wandered the park looking for things to do. After Turtle Talk's success, Hong Kong management desperately wanted a version of the attraction for the Barron Park. Unfortunately, the only readily available space was in an arcade attached to the park's Space Mountain. Garlington believed that, quote, turtles in space didn't make much sense, so he suggested that they create a version of Turtle Talk with Stitch, a character who can more easily exist in the science fiction setting and had already proved himself as a virtual puppet. Less than a year after Hong Kong Disneyland opened, in July of 2006, Stitch Encounter debuted. The new show was the same format as Turtle Talk, with the interaction lasting between 10 and 15 minutes and ending with a predetermined finale. Stitch Encounter was also a smash hit, and a second version of the attraction was added to the desolate Walt Disney Studios Paris, where it opened as Stitch Live in 2008. Perhaps the example that best illustrated the format's portability is when Disney built a bus capable of taking Turtle Talk
that's
on
cool.
the road. Disney drove the Turtle Talk bus up and down the West Coast in an effort to promote Disneyland's newest attraction, an unrelated Finding Nemo retheme of the park's long-shuttered submarine voyage ride. After this promotional period, the bus was of course retired. Just kidding. They put it on a ship, sailed it to Hong Kong, drove it into a tent, and opened it as a makeshift Turtle Talk with Crush. These kids are talking to a bus. They barely covered the wheels. Fortunately, Turtle Talk received a more respectable, heavily themed version in 2009, when it opened at Tokyo Disney Sea in the SS Columbia, the same space that had originally been envisioned for the Toon Elevator. The cost-to-benefit ratio of virtual puppetry was so favorable that Disney began to rely on the format to provide magical experiences at a low startup cost. This winning strategy could not last forever. As technology continued to improve, the virtual puppetry format became easily replicable. Soon, the trick was being found at many regional parks and even small entertainment centers. This was
What's
no
that
doubt
thing?
due to the success of Turtle Talk with Crush, and some companies even made a direct reference to it, such as Chops and Associates, a company which literally describes their system as, quote, as powerful as Turtle Talk without the huge Pixar price tag.
What makes you precious anyway? What makes you precious? Come on, answer me.
Within just a few years,
Oh, I don't
consumer
like
versions
that
of
one.
the technology would be released, and virtual characters would no longer dazzle audiences in the same way that they had at the time of Turtle Talk's debut. The way around this was to find a new way to amaze guests once again. And one obvious next step was to take the characters off of the
Robots!
screen and bring
Get
them
back
into
to
the real
robots!
world.
Yeah!
Imagineering's research and development was already experimenting with this very idea, combining the lessons learned from both the roaming animatronics and the virtual puppetry attractions in the hopes of finding the Living Character Initiative's next big hit. On March 13th, 2005, Michael
YouTubers
Eisner
hate
announced that
other
he would resign from his position as CEO of the Walt Disney Company. After being removed as chairman of the board a year prior, the writing was on the wall for Eisner, who had been the subject of a campaign launched by Roy E. Disney, dubbed Save Disney, which indicted Eisner for the company's down period. Eisner would stay on as CEO until September of 2005, in part so that he could see the opening of Hong Kong Disneyland. By that point, the board had already confirmed Disney's president Bob Iger as the company's next CEO. And as one of his first big moves, he sought
Was
to
it like
repair
having your
Disney's
entire art
relationship
form
with
be
Steve
an
Jobs
entire
and
chapter of a
Pixar.
Defunctland
Less than
video?
4 months after
It's
taking over as
weird.
CEO, Iger
It's
announced
weird,
that Disney
Naito.
had
It's very
finalized a deal
strange.
to acquire Pixar,
Like, the more
and that
we
Jobs
get
would be
into
joining
this, it's like,
Disney's
this is
board of
just what I
directors.
do.
Iger's quick move
But on a
signaled
much
a new
bigger
era
scale.
for Disney, one that would abandon Eisner's emotion-driven leadership style in favor of more measured, calculated decision-making. Iger would retain Eisner's general push for technology integration, making it one of the key tenets of the transition. Fortunately for him, the Imagineers were already one step ahead. On January 23, 2006, a new dark ride named Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue opened at Disney's California Adventure. The attraction was a re-theme of the disastrous Superstar Limo, a ride that had opened with the park and was seen as a low light of the already poorly received California Adventure.
It doesn't look
The new
great.
Monsters Inc. attraction was one of several attempts to get the park back on track. And while the re-theme was
There
not
are so
particularly
many genders
groundbreaking,
there
it did
are.
feature one
I'm not
notable
answering
addition.
that.
At the end of the attraction, the ride cars would briefly stop in front of a new animatronic of the character Roz. Guests were surprised to find that this was not just an animatronic, but it was a living character, capable of briefly interacting with guests.
Young man in the first row, make sure you get my good side.
There's at
This
least
was the
one.
first living character since Lucky to not be a virtual puppet, and Roz behaved differently than any living
There
character
might even
that
be
had
2
come
or
before
3.
her. Roz was operated by a cast member, but not voiced by one, a technique that Garlington had previously dubbed as a pseudo-living character. Roz had a voice bank of pre-recorded lines of dialogue, each with accompanying animations. These could be activated by cast members in a manner that was akin to operating a soundboard. This limited what Roz could say, but figure animator Ethan Reed recalled that the figure had over 200 lines, so there was plenty of variance for the short interactions at the end of the ride.
Thank you little dickens.
Roz did not have a dedicated puppeteer. Instead, she was one of the positions on the attraction's cast member rotation, and the controls worked similar to a POS system. There were top-level menus that, when pressed, would reveal sub-menus to customize each interaction. This is not exactly the structure, but for example, the top-level menu might have buttons for first row, second row, and third row in regards to where the targeted guest was sitting in the ride car. When one was selected, a sub-menu would be brought up, now with options for young girl,
Speaking of
adult
how many
woman,
genders
young
there
boy,
are.
adult man. This could then
Apparently
reveal
there
another
are
menu
4.
with both specific and generic lines that Roz could say. The Roz living character also utilized a technique referred to as escape lines, or outlines, which were pre-planned ways to get out of an interaction that was going poorly. These escape lines were critical, as the voice bank characters were in a unique position. With a non-verbal creature like Lucky, there was no need to manage the interaction on a verbal level. With the virtual puppets, performers had plenty of flexibility to use their own words to manage the interaction, and with training and experience, they were adept at navigating a variety of situations. Voice bank characters could speak and interact, but the cast members could only trigger the lines that were pre-recorded, so it was important for the Imagineers to plan their escape lines ahead of time. Fortunately, since Roz was a grumpy character, her escape lines did not have to have any air of compassion, so if a guest was ignoring her or purposefully trying to mess with her, Roz could simply say, "whatever," and go back to writing on her clipboard. Most of Roz's dialogue lines were cold and disciplinary.
What are you looking at? Don't make me come in there.
Although some were friendly and a few were even flirtatious. According
Whoa!
to XCM on the Mice Chat forums, Roz initially had a few lines that were deemed too mean, such as one where she could call out a guest as looking like her twin sister, which was seen as rude, especially when CMs directed it at a conventionally unattractive guest. A line calling out a bald person was removed to avoid a CM accidentally making fun of someone that had cancer.
Yeah!
This was the trade-off with antagonistic characters. While maintaining the social contract was much easier, the possibility of legitimately hurting a guest existed, and this needed to be avoided at all costs, especially at a Disney park. 2 years after Roz's debut, a new shooting dark ride named Toy Story Midway Mania opened at the newly renamed Disney's Hollywood Studios. The attraction's queue featured a new living character, an animatronic of Mr. Potato Head that utilized a voice bank soundboard system similar to Roz.
Who likes the part where you toss the rings on the little green men? Really? Just one of you?
Mr. Potato Head was also notable in that he was a feat of animatronics, capable of removing and replacing
Oh,
the
that's
ear.
crazy.
This was another milestone in the progression of the technology, and the figure showcased how sophisticated animatronics were becoming. In late 2006, rumors began to circulate that a new entry in the Living Character Initiative was being tested, featuring characters from the Muppets. Disney had finally acquired the characters from the Jim Henson Company in 2004, one of Eisner's last significant moves as CEO. The new entry into the Living Character Initiative was the first free-roaming animatronics display since Lucky the Dinosaur had debuted 3 years prior. Instead of walking on legs like the Big Dino, or walking with assistance like
Bring back
Lucky,
the Big
new
Dino.
living character, or more accurately, living characters, did not walk around, but rather rolled around on what was considered the future of transportation in 2006, a Segway. The interaction depicted the scientist Bunsen Honeydew and his assistant Beaker, who were in charge of Muppet Labs, a segment that had originated on The Muppet Show, known for its poorly run experiments that often resulted in Beaker getting injured in a cartoonish fashion. The new roaming animatronics would replicate their signature style of experiments with the new Muppet Mobile Lab, a vehicle packed full of gags. The lab could shoot confetti, blow smoke, shine lights, flip through a text display, and even inflate Beaker's nose. Both Bunsen and Beaker had a very convincing range of motion, helped by the fact that they were originally puppets, so the animatronics only needed to replicate the range of motion of a human's arm rather than an entire body. Orlando Sentinel writer Scott Powers pointed out that the characters had, quote, no strings, no hands inside the puppets, no one hidden inside the tiny vehicle, no one in sight with microphones or remote controls. While this quote is correct in that there was a significant advancement made with Muppet Mobile Lab, any implication that the interaction
This
was
one's really
autonomous
cute.
was inaccurate. There was no one in sight with microphones or remote controls, because the major advantage that Muppet Mobile Lab had over its predecessors was that it allowed the puppeteer to be located a significant distance away from the interaction. The lab had onboard cameras and microphones that allowed the puppeteer to read its environment, and the performer would monitor these as they voiced Bunsen live, drove the lab around, and triggered effects. Bruce Vaughan, who had in the time since Lucky's debut become chief creative executive of Walt Disney Imagineering, said, quote, this is an incredibly compelling and powerful way to experience the characters. They are fully aware of the people in their presence and can call you by name. Which, yeah, they're fully aware because there's a guy watching on a monitor. It's a little misleading. As was standard with living characters, Bunsen and Beaker were safe Muppets to choose. Bunsen's voice was easy to do, and since the character was less popular, it was not obvious to guess when it was slightly off. Bunsen and Beaker were also clumsy characters, closer to the personality of Goofy, while a choice like Kermit the Frog came with many of the same issues as Mickey, in that the voice is more recognizable and difficult to do, and that he would be expected to have some level of emotional intimacy. That said, keen Muppet fans could notice that Bunsen's performance varied based on the puppeteer.
Anybody else love Beaker? Yeah? Who would like to come up and see if they can have a date with him? Not, you're too young. Besides, aren't you a boy?
While in Muppet media, Bunsen was typically in his own head and focused on his experiments. When Muppet Mobile Lab debuted, his improv comedy was still being workshopped. This led to a few out-of-character moments, such as when Bunsen tried to flirt with female guests.
You can help me. I'm sort of afraid of girls. You can't help me? You can help me. Oh, okay. Well, I do need help. I've been told that many times. We'll do that later, though.
Why do they all do this? Muppet Mobile Lab was a well-received addition to the Living Character Initiative, and it would receive the Theo
It is
Award
really
for
weird.
Outstanding Technical Achievement in 2009. In this period, living characters were being introduced to the parks at a rapid pace. In 2008, the Rendezvous des Stars restaurant at the still-struggling Walt Disney Studios Park unveiled a new living character experience. An actor dressed as a chef rolled a service cart around the dining room. When the chef lifted the serving dome, guests were surprised to see Remy, the little chef from the 2007 Pixar film Ratatouille, in his film-accurate form. This little animatronic Remy wore a tiny chef's hat and held a small piece of cheese.
I love this one
Remy
too.
was touted as the smallest animatronic ever created, and he wasn't capable of much. He could move his body left to right and nod, and his platform could be rotated 360 degrees by the chef, a feature designed to prove to guests that he was not merely a puppet. Remy could also dance, sort of, and he could produce little squeaks. While he could not blink or move his mouth, the animatronic was small enough that this was not necessary to pull off the illusion of life. Some speculated that the animatronic was controlled by a remote puppeteer on the other side of the restaurant, or maybe even inside of the cart. But it appears that he was actually controlled, cleverly, by the handler's thumb, with a button placed on the handle of the serving
Oh, that's
dome.
really
This would allow
clever.
for some limited live controls, and could also trigger interactions, such as a dance-off with the chef, which, for some reason, was set to the song You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer.
Famous Disney song.
The Remy animatronic was small and practical enough to become the first living character animatronic to receive a clone. The second Remy began appearing in Epcot's France Pavilion, where he would meet guests at the Chefs de France restaurant beginning in March of 2009. The Disney press release stated that, quote, the 40-minute experience provide guests an up-close encounter with the Ratatouille star as he laughs, sniffles, and even flirts with his new friends. Why are they all like this?
You cannot go home with her. No. Where do you live?
Also in 2008, another living character based on a Pixar film was created, the adorable robot WALL-E. The WALL-E animatronic was a detailed and expressive living character, and he was built close to movie scale, with the animatronic being a bit larger than the character appeared in the film. Since WALL-E's mobility came from his pair of tracked treads, the animatronic could navigate spaces quite easily. This WALL-E
Have
also
fun with
had
your
several
flirty
fan animations
VTuber
that conveyed
predecessors.
emotions such
We
as
really
shyness
are
and
all like
confusion.
this.
Continuing the trend of Pixar-based living characters, in 2009, an animatronic
No
of
way.
Luxo Jr., Pixar's mascot,
The
began
animatronic.
hopping out at Disney's Hollywood studios. Luxo Jr. would emerge from behind a pair of window shutters, hop out, and look around at the guests below.
Okay,
And
I was
that's
hoping
all
he'd
it
go
did.
around.
Okay, we need to stop here and discuss something. Something that you might already be thinking, and something that I've been grappling with for quite a while now. What exactly is a living character? Now, this might be because I've said it so many times that it has lost all meaning, but the term living character seems to lack a clear definition.
Can't believe a
We can
field
all agree
dominated
that
by
there are a
theater
few
kids isn't
characters that are
comfortably
indisputable
sexual.
official
Dominated,
members
you say?
of the Living Character Initiative, based solely on how consistent Disney has been with labeling them as such. Lucky the Dinosaur and Crush and Turtle Talk are both living characters, full stop. But neither were the first living character. So who was? Most Imagineers and Disney press releases claim that the Living Character Initiative began in 2002 with Stitch's Picture Phone, which makes sense. The experience made it into the parks, and it was an award-winning attraction. But then, the 2010 official Walt Disney Imagineering book cites the debut of Mickey's Toon Elevator as the, quote, day the Living Characters Initiative was born. Wait, is it the Living Character Initiative or the Living Characters Initiative? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, so if Lucky the Dinosaur is a living character, and the Big Dino was his direct predecessor,
Big Dino!
and the Big Dino project preceded Mickey's Toon Elevator by at least a year, why would the Big Dino not be considered the first living character? Does it not count because it never made it into the parks? Mickey's Toon Elevator never made it into the parks. Is it because the Big Dino was never completed? Is that the differentiating factor? LA Times contributor
They gotta
Kimi
bring the Big
Yoshino
Dino back.
offered an alternative goal of the initiative when discussing Muppet Mobile Lab, saying, quote, the portable wireless technology allows Disney to bring to life
Hey,
non-traditional
Vi!
characters.
Welcome,
Most of
welcome.
the Muppets, for example, are too small to be portrayed by a human in costume. Maybe the defining factor of living characters is using technology to allow for
Kevin
non-humanoid
Perjure's
characters
having his first
to appear in
breakdown
their
of the
accurate size
episode.
and form. This is certainly true of Muppet Mobile Lab, Roz, and Remy. It's also true of the virtual puppets, like Crush and Stitch. Luxo Jr. and WALL-E are bigger than they appear on screen, and Mr. Potato Head is huge, but remember, we're supposed to be the size of toys in that attraction, so maybe his size is accurate. The real problem with
The
this
first
definition
breakdown
is that
was
Lucky's
Nemo
based
and
on an
Deuce, you are
existing
correct.
character. He's not even a specific species of dinosaur. Additionally, if the definition was simply using technology to represent characters in their accurate form, wouldn't most Disney animatronics be considered living characters then? Like Mickey from the Mickey Mouse Revue. That's Mickey close to his cartoon accurate size. Much more so than the walk-around costume. Sure, his face is messed up and long and ugly and weird, but it's close. This obviously isn't a living character though. It's bolted to the ground in a show. So is the definition of a living character a non-costumed or face character that roams the parks? No, that doesn't account for Turtle Talk with Crush or Stitch's Picture Phone. I guess they roam the screen? What about Mr. Potato Head or Roz? They're bolted to the ground, and Roz is even an animatronic in a ride. So is interactivity a requirement to be a living character? This makes sense for most of them. It also explains why Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor, a theater show with virtual puppetry segments, was named as part of the Living Character Initiative when it debuted in 2007, although it is far less of a character encounter than Turtle Talk, and all of the puppeteered characters were original characters not seen in the film. Interactivity certainly makes the most sense as a prerequisite, but is it really fair to call Remy interactive? He just shrugs and wiggles and dances. Worse, Luxo Jr. has no interactive elements. He just hops out and
That's
looks
just
around.
an animatronic.
I'm 99% sure he's pre-programmed. Why is he labeled a living character? Maybe the definition of a living character is just a guy hitting on you from a distance using technology. In that case, why is an Instagram a living character?
Anyone? 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 Anyone?
To make things more confusing, when Lucky debuted and the Living Characters Initiative was officially made public, Richard Barrier of the Orlando Sentinel cited 2 other projects as living characters. The first is Pal Mickey, an interactive plush of Mickey Mouse.
The latest marvel from the dream makers at Disney is becoming the talk of the parks, literally. This is Pal Mickey.
Hiya, pal. The name's Mickey.
The toy was a smart device that used infrared technology to allow the doll to deliver location-based and real-time information about the park. I haven't mentioned this until now because it's a doll, but apparently it's part of the Living Characters Initiative. The other supposed living character cited here was a roaming animatronic of the raccoon Miko from the film Pocahontas. The animatronic had a limited run in a Pocahontas show at Disney's California Adventure. In a different Pocahontas show, Miko was portrayed by a real raccoon, which is kind of the most living a character can get if you think about it. I mean, it's not just a raccoon at the zoo, it's a raccoon portraying the character Miko. Why is this not a living character? Is it because humans did not make this raccoon? Have humans really ever made anything? Or if you prefer, humans made this raccoon hop on this log and pretend to be a character from a movie it's never seen? I'm just saying, I think Raccoon Miko's on the board. And since we're considering candidates, what about my boy Nemo? Why is he not a living character?
Hey, it comes back to
Because
Nemo.
there's a guy in there? There's a guy in Lucky, or at least the flower cart, so why not Nemo? Is it because he's huge? Really? Wow, okay. In 2006, Imagineering began playtesting a multimedia scavenger hunt throughout Epcot themed to the Disney Channel animated series, Kim Possible. This experience had families navigate Epcot's international pavilions, using specially programmed cell phones to complete challenges, which along the way triggered physical effects and simple animatronics. During playtesting, the experience featured an interactive animatronic tin soldier, which was puppeteered and voiced live.
Read those 3 things back to me, so I know you've got them memorized.
Find the seeds.
No, that's not it.
When the experience officially opened as Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure in 2009, this interactive element was removed and the tin soldier was given a short, pre-programmed bit. Despite this, the entire adventure was still branded as part of the Living Character Initiative. So was this because a living character was originally planned as part of the project, or is it because the simple interactive elements are enough to qualify it as a living character experience? It seems that any single definition of living characters is unsatisfactory, either because it is so broad that it encompasses too many meet and greets and animatronics, or it is so specific that it eliminates characters already confirmed as part of the initiative. It seems that the Living Character Initiative is more of a feeling than a strict category. Bruce Vaughn explained that, quote, "The goal is to bring our characters to life in new and unique ways for our guests," which is a very general yet solid definition. He then immediately continued by saying, quote, "Not to replace what we have, but to have certain characters come out in different forms in the space outside of the attractions," which would eliminate half of the characters, including Crush and Roz and Mr. Potato Head. But the first part was good, bringing characters to life in new and unique ways. This lines up with Imagineer Holger Ermler's definition. He said, quote, "By combining technologies, our Living Character Initiative creates new levels of guest interaction and brings characters to life like never before."
It's
Vice
just a
President
buzzword.
of Creative for Imagineering, Don Winton, said, quote, "Take Abe Lincoln. How often do you see Abe sit down and talk? We've now taken that one step further. We're trying to get the guests close to characters in different ways." While these definitions do encompass most, if not all, of the living characters, they do come with a state of impermanence. If living characters are next-generation experiences that bring characters to life like never before, then each edition must be moving forward in some way. This is true of Lucky, which was certainly an advancement from a stationary animatronic or other roaming robots such as Giro and Gyro. Muppet Mobile Lab was definitely a step up from Lucky by removing the handler and distancing the puppeteer. Crush, and subsequently Monsters Inc. Laugh Lore, expanded how many people could participate in or at least view a living character interaction. Roz and Mr. Potato Head allowed for any CM to control the experience. Remy had a new disguise control system, but after a while, the unique elements can't break away from the obvious pattern. Mickey's Toon Elevator, virtual puppet. Stitch's Picture Phone, virtual puppet. Lucky the Dinosaur, animatronic puppet. Turtle Talk with Crush, puppet. Muppet Mobile Lab, puppet. Roz and Mr. Potato Head, soundboard puppets. Remy, Wally, Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, My Boy Nemo, all puppets. And there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, I love puppets. But if the goal is ever-evolving character interactions, always the next generation of experiences, then there are only so many ways that you can disguise a puppeteer. Throughout the decade of experiments in the format, there might not have always been a clear definition of living characters, but there is an inevitable one. Once you have explored all avenues of scripting and puppeteering, the next realm is pretty obvious.
Oh, we're getting into the wild shit now.
That has been implied by Imagineers for years, but has seldom been said explicitly. Of those rare explanations, none was as simply put as when Eric Hazeltine was the head of R&D. He explained that the Big Dino was, quote, a testbed that put us on a roadmap toward intelligent, self-directed characters. We want them to be able to move around, react, learn, and behave on their own. This was the goal, the end of the line. The True Living Character Initiative was just beginning.
What did you miss? Kevin Perger had a breakdown about what a living character was for like 10 to 20 minutes. It's probably 10. Yeah, they always wanted them to kill people. Mickey Mouse needs to be able to commit murder. This is our intermission. It is time for a break. Thanks. We already had our intermission for you and for me. For the next 7 minutes, I am going to attempt to refrain from saying Walt Disney or any variation of Imagineer. Wish me luck.
On June 7th, 1990, the theme park industry changed forever with the opening of Universal Studios Florida. Much more than an imitation of... the industry leader, Universal was a unique experience that had a distinct approach to themed entertainment. The new park attempted to create a grittier and more thrilling experience than its predecessors. This was encouraged by the project's executive creative consultant, renowned filmmaker Steven Spielberg. Several of Spielberg's blockbuster films would serve as the basis for Universal's elaborate attractions. For instance, the E.T. adventure took guests on a flying bicycle ride to E.T.'s home planet, where they were treated to several detailed show scenes and animatronic characters.
That's my favorite guy right there. That's the guy, yeah.
Spielberg had a large role in bringing the dark ride to life, even appearing as himself in the attraction's pre-show. Spielberg felt that since E.T. was a heartwarming film, guests needed a personal moment with the character in the attraction. Ride designer Peter Alexander suggested that at the end of the ride, E.T. should be able to say the guest's name as he waved goodbye. Spielberg loved the idea, and Alexander and the creative team set out to devise a way to pull off the unique interactive climax. The moment was set up in the ride's pre-show.
This is what we call a closed set, so you'll need this special pass to enter. Please give your first name to one of the stagehands, and he'll give you a pass.
According to engineer Steve Alcorn, the computer system had 8,000 possible names, all of which were recorded by E.T.'s original voice actress, Pat Welsh. After the team members selected the guest's name, they would hand guests their passport. These cards had a barcode, and before boarding the ride, guests would hand them to an operator. The operator would scan the cards, which automatically paired the name the guest provided to their ride vehicle. The resulting effect became one of the most iconic moments in all of theme parks, and an incredible, if brief, character interaction. Not only was the experience impressive, but it created a unique emotional moment between the animatronic and the guest, assuming that the guest didn't just meme it. Just a few years after opening, Universal Studios Florida was proving to be a massive success, and in late 1993, management announced that the park would expand into a full-scale resort, with several hotels, a shopping district, and a second theme park. 6 years later, on May 28, 1999, Universal Islands of Adventure held its grand opening ceremony. The new park was a different take on the theme park experience. Rather than having several lands focused on general themes, such as adventure, or locations, such as New York, Islands of Adventure was composed almost entirely of areas based on a single intellectual property. Franchises such as Jurassic Park, Dr. Seuss, and Marvel Comics were given dedicated, immersive themed lands with multiple attractions. The rides themselves were also innovative and ambitious experiences. One of the park's highlights could be found on Marvel Superhero Island. The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man was a motion simulator dark ride hybrid that was a mind-blowing experience for audiences at the time of its opening. The ride's creation was led by show producer Scott Trowbridge, one of Universal Creative's rising stars. Trowbridge had a passion for immersive storytelling and pushing the medium of theme parks forward. The stories found in Marvel Superhero Island's attractions would spill out into the land, with live performers acting out staged interactions. Unique character experiences could be found in other areas of the park as well. In Jurassic Park, the Triceratops encounter gave guests the opportunity to view and even touch a 24-foot-long animatronic dinosaur.
Tell me that's
this
him.
Complicated robotic creature was capable of moving its head and mouth,
Tell me
stomping
that's
its
him.
feet, blowing smoke out of its nostrils, and even urinating. In the Lost Continent area,
Is that
an
the big
interactive
dino?
fountain, named the Mystic Fountain, spoke to guests and shot water at them. The experience was remotely operated by a performer, and the encounter was a surprising and fun addition that delighted
Not
guests.
him?
I'm glad you came to see me. Now, what's going on with these three stooges here in front of me?
After the opening of Islands of Adventure, Scott Trowbridge was elevated to Vice President of Universal Creative. One of his first significant projects under the new title would be Revenge of the Mummy, an indoor roller coaster based off of the Mummy film franchise that was set to open at both Universal Studios Hollywood and Universal Studios Florida. Continuing his interest in immersing guests, the new ride would combine dark ride-style story scenes with a thrilling roller coaster, complete with multiple launches and track switches. Revenge of the Mummy was another massive hit for Universal Studios, and the attraction led to an attendance boost for both of Universal Orlando's parks. However, the following year, attendance dipped, which industry experts attributed to a lack of new, exciting experiences. Despite adding groundbreaking attractions to the parks, Universal Orlando's attendance
Shrek
was
4D!
stagnant. Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure performed decently well, but neither had been able to reach the success of any one of the industry leaders for Central Florida parks. By 2005, this gap was widening at a rapid rate, and Universal needed another hit attraction to turn the tide. Lucky for them, the industry leader had just made a potential major misstep. When beloved billionaire author mid-2000s J.K. Rowling was looking to create a theme park experience based on her best-selling fantasy series Harry Potter, she initially entered into serious discussions with the industry leader. After being underwhelmed by their plans and failing to secure creative control over the project, Rowling turned to Universal Creative, who were more than happy to meet her demands in order to secure the rights to the franchise. Trowbridge and his team developed concepts for the land alongside the production designers of the Harry Potter films, which at the time was wrapping up production on the 5th entry in the series. Universal's Harry Potter Land, officially named the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, was set to open at Islands of Adventure in 2010. The addition would lead to one of the single greatest shifts in the theme park industry, arguably the most clear turning point since that man opened that park in Anaheim in the mid-50s. Trowbridge oversaw the early creative development and announcement of the project, but he would not see it through construction. Just 4 months after the Harry Potter Land was announced, Trowbridge left Universal Creative to join the industry leader's design firm. He would bring with him his focus on next-generation experiences, and when combined with the ongoing projects of both his old and new company, Trowbridge would play an instrumental role in the theme park industry shifting its focus to a single word: immersion.
Okay, I can smile again.
On October 1st, 2006, the Disney parks kicked off a new promotional event named the Year of a Million Dreams. As part of the festivities, Disney randomly gifted park guests a slew of special prizes, including exclusive pins, fast passes, park tickets, and even vacation packages. To add to the giveaways, Disney created a few specially themed hotel suites at Disneyland and Walt Disney World for the purpose of gifting selected families with a stay in these one-of-a-kind rooms. This included the creation of the famous Cinderella Castle Dream Suite, allowing special guests the ultimate exclusive experience, the opportunity to spend a night inside of Cinderella Castle. A lesser-known hotel room created for the Year of a Million Dreams was at the Disneyland Hotel, where a new large suite would be created, themed exclusively to Mickey Mouse, and appropriately named the Mickey Mouse Penthouse. This elaborate suite answered the age-old question: what if Mickey Mouse was a bachelor with terrible design instincts and a huge ego? Every square inch of the penthouse was themed to the mouse.
Terrifying.
Mickey let you know when the phone was ringing. He turned off the lamp before you went to bed. He even handed you toilet paper when it was time to wipe. But most impressive of all, Mickey would appear in the mirror in the foyer and interact live with guests. But this was not a virtual puppet like Crush or Stitch. This was something
What if
else. Due to this interaction
We
being
had
exclusive to the Mickey Mouse Penthouse,
in the Mickey Mouse
there's very little
Penthouse.
documentation on the experience.
And we were
Only
both
a
girls.
few photos and videos are known to exist. From these, it appears that the Mickey Mirror worked similarly to Epcot Center's Smart One, except rather than only being able to recognize the words yes and no, the Mickey Mirror took advantage of modern
Do you think
vocal
anyone
recognition
has
technology
in
and
the
was
Mickey
able to
Mouse
understand
Penthouse?
practically any word spoken by guests. Still, the result was not an open-ended or even fluid conversation. While the program could understand a wide vocabulary of words, the interaction was based on a strict dialogue tree. At any point when the guest was speaking, Mickey was only listening for a few specific words or phrases to trigger
the point of getting the
progression
penthouse
interaction.
otherwise?
It appears that Mickey
In
had
front of
two
the Mickey
categories
Mirror.
of
Okay.
activity,
In front of the
trivia
Mickey Mirror,
and
yes or
jokes.
no?
Trivia game.
Would you?
Play a trivia game.
Also, side note, in this video, the visual component of Mickey doesn't appear in the mirror for some reason.
Show your face.
During the game, Mickey asked trivia questions that
Would
had a
you?
singular,
Absolutely.
specific answer.
Okay.
What's the name of the little girl who became Mike and Sully's friend?
Boo.
Whoa, you scared me. You're right.
After about 2 minutes of animation trivia, Mickey asked the guests if they would like to move on to Disneyland trivia, and this is how the guests respond.
Yeah, sure.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So, feeling brave, are ya?
This moment reveals a limitation of the Mickey Mirror, as Mickey clearly has trouble understanding synonymous responses to the exact reply that he is looking for. It is understandable that Mickey doesn't respond to the way this guest says hell yeah, but Mickey also fails to recognize the word sure as an acceptable response synonymous to yes. Just like Smart One, Mickey would not directly tell the guests that they were wrong. While Smart One took the blame himself, Mickey chose a different approach, a strategy sometimes referred to as soft correction. Instead of bluntly telling guests that they were incorrect, Mickey would simply state the correct answer enthusiastically, making no reference to the guest's failure.
What's the name of the great big roller coaster at Disney's California Adventure?
Supreme Scream. No.
California Screamin'.
From a social level, this resulted in a more fluid interaction, and it preserved Mickey's kind and gentle nature by avoiding the scenario in which he would have to reject or refute a guest.
You're
At
a
the end of the
stupid
video,
bitch.
Mickey asks guests where they could find their laughing place, and the guests have a total whiff. Despite this, Mickey tells them that they were right, in a strange moment that completely breaks the interaction.
Laugh Factory? We don't know.
Oh, not bad. In what year did Walt Disney open Disneyland?
Laugh Factory.
The other existing footage of the Magic Mirror showcases Mickey telling one of his jokes, and in this video, the screen is working. Mickey begins to tell a knock-knock joke, and the program is clearly waiting for the guest to say who's there. When the program cannot recognize the guest because of the background noise, Mickey repeats himself several times.
Knock, knock.
Who's there? Who's there?
Okay, now you say, who's there?
Who's there?
After finally recognizing the guest's input, Mickey completes the joke.
Little old lady.
Or lady who?
Gosh, I didn't know you could yodel.
The Mickey Mouse Penthouse Mirror was a fascinating experience. On one hand, the concept felt too ambitious to only be placed in a single hotel room, but on the other hand, the technology was clearly not ready for a wider release. The experience only worked for about 2 years, between 2006 and 2008, before being quietly removed.
Hang
The
on,
Mickey
I'm
Mirror
coming
was
back
the
to
first
this.
evidence in years that
What are you
Imagineering's
implying?
research and development was not only considering the potential of autonomous interactive character experiences, but that they were actively experimenting with them. And as they continued to pursue this breed of artificial life, they searched for new ways to test their technology and methodology on audiences. They would need a wider sample size than the occupants of a single hotel room, but the technology still required a relatively safe environment away from the general public and paying park guests. Luckily, an opportunity soon presented itself. On September 10th, 2009, Disney
Is there
held
now a
its first
non-zero
official fan
chance
club
that people
convention,
have
the
done it while
D23
watching
Expo.
me?
The multi-day event held at the Anaheim Convention
That's
Center
terrifying.
featured panels and exhibits curated specifically for Disney fans. As part of this event, Disney Parks and Resorts partnered with Walt Disney Imagineering to create an elaborate display dedicated to the future of the parks. Models, blueprints, concept art,
It
and
can't be
animatronics
ruled
line
out.
the
It
halls of
can't
the
be
exhibit
ruled
space.
out. That's the scary
display even
part.
featured appearances by a few celebrities, and by that I of course mean living characters, including Push the Talking Trash Can, Lucky the Dinosaur, and Wally. But the most notable living character in the Parks and Resorts exhibit was one that was entirely new. Not just a new character, but a new category of interaction, named
Autonomatronics.
Right.
Autonomatronics were defined as animatronics that were capable of seeing, hearing, and even thinking for themselves. The Autonomatronics demonstration at the D23 Expo featured 2 new animatronic characters, a robot named Otto and a bird named Gladys. The show began with the nervous Otto recognizing that an audience had formed. The computer attempted to determine how many people were watching the show, and the live estimation was displayed on a monitor behind Otto. This number would determine Otto's reaction, with his response differing slightly depending on the size of the crowd.
Gladys, I can't do this. There are like 25 people out there. Gladys, I can't do this. There are some people out there.
The surly Gladys then made a reference to the time of day of the presentation.
It's still the morning and we got a long day ahead of us.
Gladys coached the cowardly Otto into overcoming a stage fright, encouraging him to look out onto the crowd. Gladys told Otto to search for audience members who were smiling. The screen displayed a camera feed with graphics overlaid to show the computer's live detection software. Otto could recognize individual faces from an audience and determine whether or not they were smiling. Otto scanned the crowd, detecting and confirming a few happy guests. After demonstrating Otto's ability to detect
And
smiles,
then they were added
Gladys told him to move on
to
to
the-
hearing.
to the-
camera would single out an audience member
to the
approach
database.
the microphone, and Otto would ask them their name. On the participant's first attempt to speak, a staged feedback noise was played.
Hi, I'm Otto. What's your name? Whoa!
Feedback. Oh, sorry, we've been having trouble with that microphone.
The audience member would then say their name for a second time, and on this attempt, a humorous pitch shift effect would be applied to their voice.
And your name is?
Miranda.
Whoa! Huh. Not what I expected.
The computer clipped the guest's name directly from their input, and Otto repeated it several times.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Lorenza.
That's fun.
Lorenza.
The final part of the show was a demonstration of speech recognition. Otto asked guests what their favorite color was, and his bow tie would then light up in that color.
What is your favorite color? Blue. Blue. Got it. Okay. Watch this. Ta-da!
The Autonomatronics demonstration was one of the first significant research and development projects developed after Scott Trowbridge joined the division. While the presentation
Facial
was marketed
recognition
as
will
a
never not be
continuation of the
creepy.
Living Character
It's-
initiative, Otto felt like a distinctly new approach.
It's
to the
very
concept.
cool, but it
Trowbridge
is
had
also a little
fascination with
upsetting.
Game design and experimenting with narrative systems, and this was clearly reflected in the Autonomatronics demonstration. Rather than attempting to jump to a fully autonomous, open-ended conversation with an animatronic, the Imagineers chose to create an illusion of autonomy, a scripted show with brief moments of automated interaction. R&D Imagineer Alfredo Ayala concluded that, quote, by never relinquishing control and never stopping for the correct answer, we were able to deliver magical autonomous moments to our guests. According to Asan Hoke, an R&D associate on the project, the presentation might have been put together in as little as 3 months. And while it was an effective demonstration, the show was not without its faults. Otto often could not recognize that a guest was smiling if they were doing so in a subtle or unusual way, and the computer often required guests to produce a big cheesy grin in order for a smile to be detected. Since Otto's voice was not being generated by a computer and had a limited bank of recorded dialogue lines, he was not capable of repeating guest names in his own voice. The solution was to have Otto repeat the guest's pitch-shifted input, which was a humorous way to play off what was ultimately a limitation of the demonstration, and this sometimes resulted in Otto repeating muffled noise or random words rather than a name. The program itself also seemed to only be able to respond to a limited number of words during the favorite color segment. It could respond to simple colors, such as blue or green, but struggled with more nuanced colors, such as turquoise. The Imagineers programmed Otto to have a failsafe for this segment.
Well, my favorite color is blue. Okay? Watch this. Ta-da!
Despite its shortcomings, the Autonomatronics presentation was a fascinating and well-received part of the Parks and Resorts exhibit. The demonstration was especially compelling within the context of the Disney parks, and the potential ramifications that it could have on existing and future experiences. Trowbridge suggested, quote, imagine riding Pirates of the Caribbean, waving to a pirate, and having the pirate wave back. The possibilities are endless. Trowbridge claimed that Otto could, quote, sense if you're happy, hold conversations, and react. As we've seen, this was true-ish. Each of these claims was demonstrated, but the reality was that 95% of the show was pre-programmed and the same every time. The majority of the charm came from the pre-written dialogue and the pre-recorded performances from the voice cast. Apart from the technology's ability to match the quality of a human performer, the demonstration also seemed to lack certain safeguards, leaving it vulnerable to anything less than a willing and well-behaved participant. For instance, it is unclear what would happen if instead of their name, a guest said an inappropriate word, such as or
Turn him off! Turn him off! Turn him off!
did the program have a list of banned words that it could recognize and refuse, or would Otto just clip the audio and say the participant's curse word, or worse, again and again and again?
That's fun.
The Imagineers understood these issues and the many others that would make implementing autonomatronics into the parks difficult. Still, Trowbridge and the Imagineers were confident. Shortly after Otto's debut, the Disney Files magazine revealed that, quote, Imagineers are working to introduce autonomatronics characters in new attractions now in development. Trowbridge added, quote, we're not talking about decades into the future. Guests won't have to wait too long to see these characters in action. It's extremely
Well, I haven't heard of
difficult work,
these,
but
so
it's equally exciting. A year after Otto's debut at the D23 Expo, a new animatronic character quietly debuted at Disneyland. Imagineering once again took advantage of the park's underutilized Inventions exhibit, setting up a limited-run playtest. The presentation was a new take on a fortune teller machine, featuring a new character named Destiny. During the playtest, guests would insert a coin into the machine, and the Great Destiny would appear from behind the curtain.
Yes. A film crew. My own reality show is finally taking place. Welcome to my crib.
Destiny was a minimatronic, a small and light build of animatronic most recognizable as the frame used for Tom Morrow 2.0, the host of Disney Channel's Imagineer That. Destiny would have a brief conversation with guests before instructing them to gaze into his crystal ball. The guest's face would be projected onto the ball, and after Destiny told them their fortune, a photograph of the guest would be printed out as a souvenir.
Now go forth and tell everyone that you have seen the great and powerful Destiny.
In this playtest, Destiny is clearly being controlled remotely and voiced live by a puppeteer. Lasting just 2 days in September of 2010, little information was given on Destiny's purpose and what exact technologies were being tested. Destiny would appear in Inventions again for another 3-day playtest in January of 2011, with no additional context provided. The next time Destiny would be seen was that August, when Disney held its second D23 Expo. Once again, Imagineering Research and Development set up a presentation in the Parks and Resorts exhibit.
Like, it
this
can't
time
be an
starring
AI.
the amazing Destiny. Unlike the Inventions playtest, this Destiny was no longer remotely controlled or voiced live. Rather, he was fully autonomous and capable of carrying out the interaction on his own. While Otto played to a crowd, the autonomous Destiny was a much more personal interaction. The presentation was also much shorter, with Destiny's experience only lasting around 90 seconds. Using the same basic format as the playtest, guests were handed a coin to insert into Destiny's machine. After doing so, Destiny opened the curtains and asked the guests their name. After engaging in some quick banter, Destiny told guests to gaze into his crystal ball. The 3 main fortunes that the autonomous Destiny would assign were that the guests would be super famous,
Because you are going to be super famous.
very rich,
Yes, make sure the riches can find you.
or in love.
Because you're so in love.
The Great Destiny was an obvious step up from Otto, and this was most apparent in the difference in presentation. While Otto's backend was integrated into a show, Imagineering isolated Destiny's interaction from the displays of his inner workings. This allowed Destiny to be presented as a fully realized character, while Imagineers on the other side of the showroom explained the technology used in the interaction. In fact, according to Trowbridge, displaying Destiny's processes was not the original plan. He explained, quote, we had people peering under the booth, refusing to believe there wasn't a human somewhere behind the scenes making him act the way he did. It got to the point where we had to show people the computer screens that were actually displaying these characters' decision-making processes to prove
This
that
is
they really
pretty
were
cool.
acting of their own accord.
That's
Destiny
going to be
was able
most
to
of my
track guests
reactions
within
lately. It's just that's
proximity
pretty
to him,
cool.
determine how many guests there were, distinguish between those that were alone and those that were in a group, and detect who was watching the show
Well,
and who was
we've
merely
come a
passing
long way
by.
from the big
He could
dino,
also
though.
estimate a person's
I miss
age,
him.
height, and gender. Destiny also had a much more robust expression recognition system than Otto, and he was able to determine whether a guest was happy, sad, angry, surprised, dance, or impatient. Wow, he's right. I'm not feeling very dance today. How do you know that? Imagineer Josh Gorin explained that Destiny was able to engage in, quote, fully unscripted, live interactive
I used to get recruiter
conversations
calls
with
from people
guests.
trying to
As
get
with the
game
claims around
developers
Otto,
for Imagineering,
this was
really?
true-ish. All of Destiny's audio was still pre-recorded, most of his movements were pre-animated, and every interaction was more or less the same. It appeared that Destiny did track the
neither
person he was
qualified nor
speaking to
interested.
and automatically changed his head position to meet their gaze.
Naito was almost
More
an
than any living
Imagineer?
character before him.
That's
Destiny
crazy.
leveraged stimulus-driven reactive branching, in which brief detours in the interaction are activated when the system recognizes
I also
something
take stimulus
in its
diversions
environment.
from time to
This
time.
was an effective
Like
way
this.
to vary each interaction and support the illusion of life, as it basically dedicated a moment to allowing the character to prove its ability to see and hear the guest.
Stimulus
While
diversion
the majority
over.
of Otto's autonomous features were timed,
No, I
pre-planned
did not put the
beats
slinky
with
down.
variation depending on input, Destiny's reactive branches would only occur if he noticed something with a certain level of confidence. The most common example of this was when more than one person was engaged in the interaction. If Destiny noticed that there were two people interacting with him, he would ask both guests their name.
That you have some people with you. Very good. Hello back there.
Despite utilizing the sophisticated stimulus-driven reactive branching, Destiny
It's making
spent
me think the
majority of
difference between
time
Eris
using
and Destiny
old-fashioned
is very
railroading.
small. There's no
The Imagineers
demonic
cleverly gave
powers
Destiny
voice
an
of
aggressive,
Slink.
egotistical personality, allowing him to interrupt guests and focus on himself.
I want to know if you know my name. Huh? What is my name?
Destiny.
Destiny! I love the sound of that.
Sometimes this was an intentional and humorous way to keep the interaction moving. Other times it appeared to be a problem with the program, where guests would get a single syllable
I'm
out
much-
and
I'm
Destiny
much
would
different
move
from
on as if
Destiny.
he'd understood them.
How do you feel? What do
I
you
can
like to do
swear.
now that you're
Watch.
super
Fuck.
famous?
Destiny can't do that.
Okay, all right. That's fair. It's all right.
Like Otto, Destiny's limited pre-recorded dialogue prevented him from engaging with guests when asking their names.
What is your name?
Damon.
Ah, good. Okay.
Destiny's crowd recognition was also imperfect, and he had a difficult time distinguishing between lurkers and group members.
Ah, yes, I see you going out alone. Who is this over here?
There were also times where the interaction just did not work. Sometimes Destiny would not recognize something someone said, even in a call and response moment in which he asked the guest to say something specifically.
You know what? You can get it only one place. And who is that from?
Destiny.
Say my name.
Destiny.
Destiny's imperfections were expected in something explicitly labeled a playtest, and many of the issues could have been worked out by the Imagineers. But there was an insinuation that they might not have to improve Destiny themselves. The most curious claim that the Imagineers made about Destiny is that he used artificial intelligence,
said the
which is a broad
word!
term that could be applied to a variety of the technologies that Destiny might have been using. Speech, facial, and expression recognition are all tools that could use processes that would fall under the very wide scope of artificial intelligence, so this does not tell us much. Further, the Imagineers claim that Destiny learned with each interaction. But again, how? Let's listen closer to how Imagineer Josh Gorin described the technology.
It's actually reading emotion by looking at the expressions on the face. So we're assigning happy values, sad values, angry, surprised, impatient.
Hey, you skipped one.
Destiny also has a short-term memory, so he's looking at faces and remembering them.
So if Destiny stored the facial data of the people that he spoke with in order to recognize a person if they did the experience again, this would satisfy the claim that Destiny was learning from each interaction. But was this the same as improving with each interaction? If you listen closely to what the Imagineers were claiming at the time, it appears that Destiny would learn from the playtest as a whole, because Imagineers were recording the interactions to study later and manually improve Destiny's programming. Still, the touted use of artificial intelligence in the context of character interactions was notable, and it begged an obvious question.
Are you going to pass the Turing test?
The Turing test. That's a good question. You know, I would say that the line of guests with smile on their faces have demonstrated that we've passed the Disney test.
Dang, this guy's good.
He's
Otto
good.
and Destiny were audacious playtests from Imagineering, and they both gave insight into what Trowbridge and R&D believed the future of interactive characters was. After Destiny's debut, journalist Cyrus Sherrod wrote, quote, "For Imagineers, the emphasis now is on creating entirely autonomous agents that blend free-roaming robotic bodies with artificial intelligence, giving birth to characters that are able to wander the parks, telling stories, answering questions, and generally ingratiating themselves with awestruck audience members." This was not merely an idea. It was an endgame to decades of research and development, the final realization of living characters that has been suggested at various points, but when coupled with the progress seen in Otto and Destiny, no longer seemed like a fantasy. Still, even if the technology could be developed, how serious was Disney and the Imagineers about this idea? Otto and Destiny were fun and impressive, but they were stationary animatronics of new, unestablished characters, playtesting in the safe confines of the D23 Expo. Would this class of Imagineers dare to experiment with beloved characters and be comfortable with putting them in front of the general public? Were they, along with management,
God, I
willing
hope
to
so.
take that risk? The answer was apparently yes.
Yes!
Because while developing the autonomatronic technology, research and development was working on another first-of-its-kind interactive character experience, and they were committed to not letting it remain a playtest. They wanted this character to live in the parks, and the character they chose was a big one. The big one.
It's the mouse! The big cheese!
Universal's announcement of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter sent shockwaves through the theme park industry, and for the first time in its over 50-year history, the Disney parks felt a true threat, if not to their bottom line, at least to their cultural dominance. Disney knew that they needed some sort of counter to Wizarding World, specifically for their Florida parks, and a new virtual puppetry attraction or a cheap overlay wasn't going to cut it. The details of Universal's Harry Potter project promised to be a new kind of immersive entertainment experience, and this likely pressured the Imagineers to think outside of the box when planning their next project. There was already an obvious spot for development at Walt Disney World. In the Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland, a large underutilized space had existed since 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea Submarine Voyage had closed in 1994. Rumoredly, this plot of land was where Disney intended to put their proposed Harry Potter attraction. After the deal with Rowling fell through, Disney continued to target this area, eventually landing on a reimagining of the entire land. The project, titled New Fantasyland, would add dining venues based on Beauty and the Beast, a Little Mermaid dark ride, and several elaborately themed meet and greet spaces. As rumors of the expansion began to circulate, details of another major project began to emerge, one that was directly tied to the plans for New Fantasyland. Walt Disney World was embarking on what was described as the Next Generation Experience Initiative, which included a reported $1 billion overhaul
The
of Walt
Next
Disney
Gen
World technology
Initiative.
infrastructure. At the center of the project was a multi-purpose wristband with an RFID tag.
Oh, we know how that
would
thing
serve as the
worked.
guest park ticket,
It
hotel room
didn't.
key, and more. While the majority of the project was based around unifying the resort's technology systems, there were several auxiliary benefits, including unique storytelling opportunities. From the moment that the news of the initiative broke, it was reported that a major use case of the wristbands would be triggering interactive experiences around the park. Specifically, characters would be able to know information about a guest, such as their name, their birthday, and what attractions they had already visited that day. The development of Next Gen would occur alongside New Fantasyland. These projects, which would cost over $1.5 billion combined, had the potential to introduce a different but equally impressive experience to what Universal was developing with Wizarding World. When the New Fantasyland project was announced at the 2009 D23 Expo, fans were generally excited about the plans, with a few exceptions. Namely, the development would result in the closure of Mickey's Toontown Fair, a popular area that
Toontown.
featured the fictional homes of Disney's Fab Five. This was the primary meet and greet space in the Magic Kingdom, the most popular theme park in the world, for Mickey Mouse, the most popular cartoon character in the world. While the announcement
Not for
of
long,
Mickey's
buddy.
eviction disappointed
I'm coming
both
for you,
fans and casual
Mouseman.
guests, the Imagineers already had something big
Michael
planned
Mouse.
for the Big Cheese. A Mickey Mouse experience that was somehow even more immersive than breaking into his home or staying a night in his penthouse. The most ambitious, perilous, and jaw-dropping character meet and greet ever devised. In May of 2010, reports began to circulate that a new playtest was occurring in Disneyland's Toontown. Imagineering had
Please
taken
tell
over the
me
Mickey's House meet and greet space
this
for
thing
a few
killed
days,
someone.
asking select guests to participate in a new type of experience. When guests were led into the room to meet Mickey, they were shocked to find that the typically static, silent costumed character had been given an articulated head and the ability to speak.
Thank you. 3 years old?
By this point, articulated character heads had existed at the park for 2 decades. Select costumes allowed performers to control the movement of their character's mouth, using low-tech mechanisms such as their own arms, chin straps, and eventually, squeezable hand levers. In the early 2000s, a new electronic articulated character head debuted, which allowed the performer to activate the opening and closing of the character's mouth with one hand and the blink of the character's eye with the other. Both actions were triggered by the simple flick of a finger. In all of these cases, full control of the articulated head was given to the performer inside of the costume, who was almost always puppeteering the mouth to a pre-recorded audio track. The Toontown playtest was immediately different from any articulated characters the guests had seen in the parks up to that point. For one, the performer in the costume was not controlling Mickey's mouth and eyes with their hands. This was being done remotely, similar to the radio-controlled puppetry
I'm
that was
so
found in
scared of
shows
this
such as
mouth.
Welcome to Pooh Corner. Second, Mickey was not following a pre-recorded audio track. While never officially confirmed, it appears that this talking Mickey was being performed live by Mickey Mouse's official voice actor, Brett Iwan. The news of the playtest first broke after 2 videos were posted on YouTube. These videos have since been taken down, but while they were live, they garnered thousands of views and were reported on by several fan sites. The leak of these videos might have encouraged Disney to release an official video from the playtest, which they would do alongside a blog post 1 week later. Besides this official footage, only one other video of the experience is still online. In both videos, Mickey speaks to guests in a natural and specific manner. In one clip, he makes direct reference to an outfit that a guest is wearing.
I like your princess shirt.
In another, he makes a perfectly timed, context-specific
So
joke.
many vids has been taken down. How much of the internet is... Yeah.
The real tell that this Mickey is being voiced live is the character's ability to call out guests by name, which can be seen in Disney's official clip. Based on all available evidence, Iwan was present for these playtests and was voicing Mickey remotely in real time. This setup meant that the performer in the costume likely had no idea what Mickey was going to say next, but this was fairly seamless with only a few noticeable mistimings. The limited footage from the playtest documents some amazing interactions, and guests were awestruck by talking Mickey. The setup combined animatronics, costumed characters, and remote puppetry into a new category of experience that fulfilled a common yet lofty dream that park guests had held for decades. What if one day you could go to Disneyland and have a conversation with Mickey Mouse? If the Imagineers could bring Mickey to life for guests on a regular basis, the results would be invaluable, but the stakes were also high. While the living character methods and techniques had evolved in the decades since Mickey's Toon Elevator was developed,
Do you think
the
this
basic
one's gonna
problems
flirt
with a
too?
live Mickey meet and greet remained: cost, logistics, and character integrity. The latter was a greater risk than ever with the advent of the internet. By
Just make
this
your
point
voice
in
actors
2010,
indentured servants who
Disney
work
Parks
16
content
hours a
was
day.
proving to be
No.
massively popular on YouTube for
But-
whatever reason. In the past, if there was an incident during a meet and greet, it was a localized
But what you
error
need to understand is
experienced
not
by a
only
small
do you
crowd,
have the
but
voice
now
actor
any small
always
flub could
working
garner
16
millions
hours
of
a day,
views. And
you
this
also
was
have a
with the
guy
non-speaking
in there
characters.
who is
Among the
not
many other
talking
problems, the risk
and
of
is
a
just
mistake with a
moving.
live actor was too high. There was no scenario in which Disney would allow Talking Mickey to become a permanent attraction in this format. So what was the purpose of the playtest? There are likely several questions that the Imagineers hope to answer by putting Talking Mickey in front of park guests, such as, does the remotely operated articulated head work reliably? What do guests talk about with Mickey? What happens if Mickey blinks and the eyes don't go back up and the performer's line of vision is completely cut off? Is Mickey able to hug a child while talking in a way that does not result in his animatronic mouth biting the kid
I'm
and
so
hurting them,
scared!
or worse, breaking the expensive machine? When the performer looks into the
His
mirror,
mouth-
and
I'm
rather
so
than seeing
scared
their
of
own
his
reflection,
mouth.
they see a picture-perfect Mickey Mouse, who duplicates their movements exactly, yet speaks on his own accord with a voice that is not their own. Does this result in an immediate mental breakdown, or is there a delay? After footage of the playtest surfaced, fan reaction was generally positive. Most people found Talking Mickey to be an awe-inspiring, magical concept, while some found the interaction creepy and worried that it would scare young children. As with any playtest, there was no guarantee that the experiment would become a permanent attraction, and a Talking Mickey in particular seemed to be a long
This
way
could
off,
be the
given
bite
that
of
Disney was not
65.
planning on Mickey being voiced live. But Trowbridge seemed confident in the future of Talking Mickey, saying, quote, "We're always looking for innovative ways to let guests interact with our beloved characters, and we have many more surprises up our sleeves." This was proven to be genuine, as Talking Mickey popped up again less than a year later. On March 4th, 2011, Talking Mickey began testing again in Disneyland, this time outside of his house in Mickey's Toontown. However, this Mickey was not voiced live, a difference that was immediately apparent. The Imagineers decided to integrate another living character method into
Talking
the meet
Mickey
and
is
greet
two
and
guys,
made
yeah.
this new version of Talking Mickey a soundboard character, akin to Mr. Potato Head or Roz. The soundboard approach was advantageous in that it mitigated the risks of a live voice actor. It also created an experience with a consistent format. This new Talking Mickey had a format consisting of 4 stages: greeting, question, photo, goodbye. Mickey would begin the interaction by greeting the guest with one of several phrases. He would then ask a simple question, such as, "What have you done at Disneyland today?" After this, he would initiate the photo, which was then followed by one of several goodbyes. This Mickey paled in comparison to the test from a year prior, and the soundboard appeared to have extremely limited vocabulary. Plus, the interaction being located outside definitely affected the remote operator's ability to properly hear the guest.
Are you having a good time?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
While the downgrade was evident, this was just the starting point. Mickey was the character that came with the most risk, but he also might have been the only one valuable enough to justify the massive amount of work that the Imagineers had ahead of them in order to bring this new type of living character to life. In August of 2011, just 5 months after the Mickey's Porch playtests, Talking Mickey was meeting with guests once again, this time at the D23 Expo. Throughout the multi-day event, Talking Mickey would switch back and forth between the live version voiced
You
by
could
Iwan
not catch
and the
me
soundboard
hugging
version.
anything near
The difference
that,
between the
moving
two
my
was
head
still
anywhere
obvious,
near
but
that
the
that
soundboard
mouth.
version appeared to have improved significantly since the test on Mickey's Porch. Mickey's vocabulary was slightly more robust, and the question segment was expanded into a play segment, where in addition to asking a question, Mickey could engage guests in a short activity, referred to as a show. An example of this is a segment in which Mickey asked guests to dance with him. Mickey also had new stimulus-driven diversions. These were not autonomous like Destiny, but they did behave in a similar way. For instance, if the remote operator noticed that Mickey was
What
about
if they
to
put
meet
that
someone
mouth
that
on the
was
Killer
dressed as a
Dino
princess,
robot? They
they
don't
had a
need
button
that mouth
would
on the
shift
Killer Dino
dialogue during the
robot.
greeting to address
The
this
big Dino
specifically.
has his own is strong enough.
If a guest wanted an autograph, one of the the most common activities during a
This is
standard
just
meet
yet
and
an.
greet, the
Well,
remote
this isn't a.
operator could
This is
fill the
kind of a
play segment
mechanical
with
Turk.
an autograph diversion.
You would like an autograph. You got it.
The autograph was a multi-stage event, with Mickey having multiple lines for initiating the autograph, signing his name, and handing the paper back to the guest. Something that the Imagineers
There's a
must
guy
have learned
trapped in
during
there, but he's
testing
not
was
talking.
that guests often wanted Mickey to record a video message. To pull this off, the character attendant would very clearly tell Mickey that he was on video, and the remote operator would then trigger one of several dialogue lines that Mickey could say directly into the camera. Many of these new additions to the soundboard are indicative of an aspect of Mickey that we somehow have yet to discuss. We know that Mickey is iconic and valuable. We've talked about how he is kind, emotionally intelligent, and attentive. But there is one characteristic of Mickey that becomes immediately apparent when you make him talk: his stardom. Mickey is your friend, your pal, in the same way that any celebrity is your friend, in that they are not. A friend is someone that you know, and critically, someone that knows you. Mickey does not know you. He also doesn't exist, but even if he did, he would not know you. Mickey is famous. All of the Disney characters are in a way, but Mickey most of all. Because of this, when a guest meets him, the interaction is much
I also
closer to a
thought we were
celebrity
going to get
encounter
flirtations
than it is
again.
a reunion between two friends. Guests want Mickey's autograph, they want him to record a video shouting out their friends at home, and when they inevitably drone on for too long and hold up the line, Mickey pulls the classic celebrity get me out of this conversation move, which is of course asking, hey, do you want a picture? This transition from the play segment to the photo segment was critical to the progression and ending of the interaction. Just like with most celebrities, Mickey has a vested interest in both not coming off as rude and trying to exit the conversation as quickly as possible. A photo is transactionary, a service, an artifact that is satisfactory to the guest or fan, and also a clear end to the interaction. This understanding of Mickey's stardom being baked into the soundboard resulted in a much more efficient experience, and thus one that had a better likelihood of making it into the parks. Even with the improvements made to the soundboard, there were still plenty of awkward moments. After taking the photo, guests often didn't exit right away, so as Mickey said goodbye, he had to clearly motion for them to leave, like he was shooing them away. Mickey being on display was also not conducive to the interaction at all, and while waiting in line, guests would see Mickey doing something fun, such as dancing with a guest. Then, when it was their turn, they would ask Mickey directly if they could dance with him as well.
Jump ahead. No? Okay. Mickey, great!
Because of the way the soundboard was set up, Mickey had to go through the entire dance activity again, of which there was only one song, the hot dog dance, which is the best song and the only one people wanted to do anyways, but all of the dialogue leading up to and following it would have to be repeated. Also, not that I ever envy a costumed performer, but it must be particularly difficult to be already exhausted from wearing an animatronic on your head, then having to go do a full dance, then having another family come up only to ask you to dance again, and before you can even catch your breath, the backstage operator goes, guess we're dancing again, boop. You can even see the character attendant and Mickey both hesitate like, we're not dancing again, are we?
You want to do another dance, or... Oh, okay.
Well, it's not up to either of you. Let's dance. Boop, bum, 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 bum. I don't want to dance. There were plenty of other small issues, such as long delays between lines of dialogue, a lack of proper responses to common questions. And maybe this is just me because I've watched so many of these, but if I have to hear him say cheese one more time, I'm gonna lose it.
Cheese, 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 cheese.
Sometimes the remote operator would accidentally cue the wrong line of dialogue, such as in this clip, when these kids have fully exited the interaction and Mickey asks them for a hug.
Hi guys. Can I have a hug?
And they're like, oh, okay, I guess, yeah, come back in. Or in this clip, when this guy walks up to Mickey and Mickey says,
How are you? All right. Sure. Let's take another picture. All right.
Mick, I'm sure you're tired, but this guy deserves the full experience. Don't make me make you dance again. The soundboard was certainly imperfect and needed to be improved. But just as critical, Mickey needed a controlled environment. Not outside on a porch in Disneyland, not on the noisy D23 showroom floor, not even in an existing meet and greet space. If Talking Mickey was going to work as a permanent experience in the park, a space needed to be built to support the interaction. And it probably was not a coincidence that Mickey was already looking for a new home at the Magic Kingdom. On February 11, 2011, Mickey's Country House closed its door for the final time. Functionally, Magic Kingdom could not go a single day without a Mickey Mouse meet and greet. So while his home was being demolished, Mickey was sent on a tour around the park, meeting guests at random locations wearing a variety of outfits and often standing on the hot concrete with no shade, like a dang country bear. Or my boy Nemo. Mickey's nomad phase would be short-lived, as Disney was already under construction on a new home for the mouse at the entrance to the park. The Town Square Expo Hall had long been another of Magic Kingdom's now dwindling underutilized spaces. It had originally been home to The Walt Disney Story, a film about Walt Disney's life, narrated by Walt himself using archival audio.
Sometimes I think of myself as a little bee. I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody.
After the film stopped playing in 1992, various exhibits and rest areas filled the hall.
You want to
With
give
the
another
demolition
take
of
on that
Mickey's
one,
Toontown
Walt?
and
Oh,
its meet and
right.
greets, Disney had earmarked the
Yeah,
space
well, it'll
as
work.
the future residency of Mickey Mouse. The building would be renamed to the Town Square Theater, and the premise of the meet and greet would be that Mickey was about to go on stage and perform a magic act. The Town Square Theater opened on April 1st, 2011. The new meet and greet had solid theming and a few fun gags that Mickey could interact with. But the experience was nothing groundbreaking, and it was a step down from Mickey's elaborately themed house in Toontown. However, this was not Magician Mickey's final form, as Imagineering had bigger plans for the space. On October 31st, 2011, Disney released a video of Talking Mickey greeting guests at the Magic Kingdom for the first time. A Disney Parks blog post made it clear that this was only a test that would be experienced by a limited number of guests during the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. This testing period was maybe the strangest iteration thus far. Upon first glance, it appears as though this is Soundboard Mickey. All of the phrases are generic, and the conversation follows the standard format. But after watching several of these interactions, it appears that this Mickey is actually being voiced live. There are little phrases that don't seem overly specific, but occur way too quickly and are far too perfect to be pre-recorded.
I have one from 30 years ago. I need a new one. Oh, I look so much older. I doubt it.
After several days of this peculiar testing, Talking Mickey disappeared once again. For the next 2 years, Talking Mickey was not seen outside of a few sporadic tests, all of which appear to be the soundboard version. This absence was likely the result of several factors, such as Imagineers spending time improving the soundboard and Disney focusing on the phased opening of New Fantasyland. But the most important factor
I'm
might
locked
have been
in.
the debut
I'm in
of
here.
Disney's next-gen technology
Hang on, let me get
initiative,
a
now
bit of
renamed to
popcorn.
My Magic Plus. This turned out to be a lengthy and difficult rollout, as the RFID bands, officially named Magic Bands, were tested and integrated into every park and hotel throughout the resort. The storytelling opportunities of the new technology took a back seat
Talking
as Disney and
Mickey.
its contractors attempted to get the most important aspects
It
of the program
kind of
working
does sound
efficiently.
like a Freddy
The Talking
Freddy
Mickey patent
variant.
reveals that the team planned to use Magic Bands for the soundboard
You gotta
character,
beat Golden
explaining that the bands
Mickey
may
on
provide
night
the
7.
backstage operator with,
I've
quote,
never played a
profile
Freddy game.
information such as birthday, hometown, prior park history, family and friends, likes and dislikes, and other data, in order for the, quote, simulated conversation to feel more personal and special for the
good
guest.
popcorn.
This feature would have resulted in a level of knowledge verging on simulated omnipotence that was previously unseen in living character interactions. It was not until most of New Fantasyland and My Magic Plus had been rolled out that Talking Mickey would finally appear once again. But this time, he was here to stay. On October 21st, 2013, Disney published a video showcasing Mickey wearing a brand new magician's outfit and talking with guests at Magic Kingdom. This permanent iteration of Talking Mickey was the soundboard version, but the Imagineers had added so much variability that each interaction felt entirely unique. The operation of the experience was achieved by a large team of cast members. When guests reached the end of the queue, they were led into a hallway which featured doors to 4 rooms. The meet and greet could be happening simultaneously in all 4 of these rooms, but on slower days, Mickey would only be meeting in 2 of the 4. The hallway was designed so that guests would ignore the closed doors and focus only on the one room that they were being led to. After entering the space, guests would wait in a short queue as a few parties ahead of them had their interaction with Talking Mickey. This was a critical component to the experience. Not only did this small holding area keep the main queue moving, but it gave adult guests an expectation of how the interaction was supposed to play out in terms of format and length. For young guests, it gave them an opportunity to see Talking Mickey interact with a few other people before it was their turn. The articulated character could be quite surprising to children on its own, but it would have been much more terrifying if the child were led into an empty room with Talking Mickey already staring right at them. While the short queue provided enough time to set expectations, it was not so long that guests would see too many interactions ahead of them. When it was guests' turn to meet Mickey, they would enter a well-orchestrated dance, achieved by the collaborative efforts of 4 cast members: the costume performer, the backstage operator, the character attendant, and the photographer. These 4 people, equipped with the technology
do you see that
and
button
methodology
right next
that
to
the
dance that
Imagineers
says
had developed,
princess?
worked
I
together
pressed
to
that
bring
before
this
going in
one-of-a-kind
stream.
experience to life. The first person that guests would interact with was the character attendant.
It's
This
one of
cast
my.
member was
If I
the
get a
on-the-ground
Steam, I don't
leader
have
of
a
the
Steam Deck
interaction.
yet.
In a
but
standard meet and greet, the
Stream
character
Deck.
attendant helps with the technical
But
aspects
once I do,
of the
there will just be a
experience,
prince.
such as
There will be a
holding
princess
bags
button,
and
and I'll
taking
press it.
photos with guest cameras. They also helped with the quality of the interaction, often speaking on behalf of the characters in a supporting role. All of this would be true for Talking Mickey, with the added responsibility of helping to coordinate the interaction with the backstage operator who was watching on monitors. After guests briefly spoke with the character attendant,
Voice
Mickey would
from
turn
Mickey
to
Mouse.
face them
There's
and the
definitely an
interaction would
episode,
begin.
right?
The final version of the soundboard was elaborate, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of phrases baked into the program. This meant that the backstage operator had to be quick, skilled, and knowledgeable on the interface. The backstage operator for the Talking Mickey interaction was, for some reason, located in a backstage area all the way in Animal Kingdom. They were nowhere near the meet and greet, possibly due to the lack of available space at Magic Kingdom. The backstage operator sat in front of 5 screens, 3 cameras that looked into the meet and greet space, and 2 control boards. The backstage operator had a microphone that they could use to communicate with the costume performer. This was mainly used to inform them of information about the guests, such as, they have an autograph book, and to inform them of upcoming show programs, such as, we're going to do the hot dog dance. The 2 control boards were separated into 2 types of
We
phrases.
love the hot dog
reactive
dance.
and narrative. The reactive board was filled with anytime phrases, such as oh boy, thanks, aw, and great. Likewise in Mom's Eliza, Talking Mickey took advantage of line cycling. This was especially important for the anytime phrases, as each button would cycle through different variations or inflections of the same idea. So if there was ever a time that Mickey was in a jam, and the backstage operator needed to spam the oh boy button, for instance, it would not sound obviously robotic.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy!
The narrative board featured the interactions
There it
main
is!
shows. The
Press-
princess diversion
press it!
remained in the soundboard, with the addition of more
Ah,
specific
fuck, I missed.
dialogue in which Mickey had the ability to call out several princesses by name.
Oh my look! It's Princess Elsa! It's Princess Jasmine!
Talking Mickey was given several additional stimulus-driven diversions for a variety of common occurrences, such as a guest
Give
wearing
us a
Mickey
hot
ears,
dog dance routine. No,
a guest dressed as a pirate,
Have you heard?
you'll never be able to redeem it. Have you seen how much I?
and the most
Have you seen
common,
how much
a
I
guest
charge you
celebrating their
for
birthday.
drinks?
Yeah.
When the attraction debuted, the birthday show was not triggered by the
Yeah.
guest magic bands. Instead, it was activated by a signal that the character attendant would give to the backstage operator if they noticed that the guest was wearing a birthday button or if they were directly told that it was a guest's birthday. The birthday show was a massive shift for the soundboard. There were line variations for every stage of the interaction.
How many drinks
The
do you
play
think I have
segment would be
redeemed at this
entirely
point?
birthday themed,
Many.
And Mickey was even able to make reference to a guest's age if they were
Or
between
at
the
least as many
ages
as I
of 1
have
and 10.
streams.
5 years old?
If 2 children were meeting Mickey, one who was celebrating a birthday and one who was not, Mickey had the ability to ask the non-birthday child when their birthday was, and respond to their answer with phrases like, "That's coming right up." He would then offer to sing them both a birthday song. This was a clever and thoughtful moment that achieved the emotional attentiveness that was expected of Mickey, but was so difficult to pull off in a living character interaction composed solely of pre-recorded dialogue. For international guests, Mickey had the ability to speak different languages, namely Spanish, Portuguese, and Japanese.
Let's see if I remember how to say this.
Nos tomamos una foto juntos?
Sí, por favor.
Sometimes a guest would approach Mickey with a specific question. The Imagineers gave Mickey a few answers to questions that must have been common enough during playtesting to warrant being programmed into the board. For instance, if a guest asked, "Where is Minnie?" Mickey would respond that she was at Pete's Silly Sideshow, which was Minnie's main meet and greet space in the Magic Kingdom. Apart from a few of these pre-recorded responses, if a guest asked a specific question, this is when the role of the character attendant became crucial. In a perfect interaction, the character attendant wouldn't need to say anything. But if a guest asked Mickey something specific or put him in an awkward situation, the character attendant would work with the backstage operator to get the interaction back on track. Mickey had several escape phrases on the reactive board, such as and "I'm not sure." This would give the character attendant the ability to step in and provide an answer, usually framed as though they were reminding Mickey of something that he already knew. The backstage operator then had several generic reactive
This
phrases
kind of
to the
performance
character
magic is
attendant's
really
intervention.
cool.
I think because you like to do lots of things, right, Mickey?
That's just what I was going to say.
This provided the team enough flexibility to fend off most of the unpredictable questions or requests that Mickey would receive from guests. If there was no obvious stimuli to kick off the interaction, Mickey would often default to generic shows which were dictated by the general age of the primary guest. For slightly older children, Mickey would talk about attractions at the park and ask them to do a themed pose. This gave them a clear directive that was playful
Like
and
the
interactive,
stagecraft
but did not
work of this
infantilize
is
them.
fascinating.
For adults, Mickey would often perform one of several magic tricks, all of which would either go awry or were comically simple.
Is this your card?
No.
It's not.
This very static show segment prevented the adult from engaging Mickey in an open conversation, and instead relegated them to an audience member, smartly taking advantage of the well-known format of magic tricks to guide the experience. The downside to these segments were that they were long, and on busy days, Mickey would be required to do shorter interactions. Still, guests would sometimes ask Mickey to do a magic trick, so he was given dialogue to gently turn them down using the blame absorption technique.
Well, I tried a new one last night, and we found out the sprinklers work. Yep.
Most adorably, for small children or toddlers, Mickey would speak much softer and be more gentle, and he even had a few sentimental lines of dialogue that were directed at the parent or guardian. Mickey also had specific phrases for the Halloween and Christmas parties. After the show portion was over, Mickey would ask guests to take a picture. Most, if not all of these lines were phrased in such a way that it was Mickey asking the guest if he could have a picture with them. He did not ask if the guest wanted one. This is another subtle example of the Imagineers taking Mickey's emotional attentiveness, which was most often a liability to interactions, and using it as a way to progress the experience forward. Also, they definitely realized how annoying it was for him to say cheese over and over again, because they went all out on the cheese variations.
Cheese. No, look. Stilton.
At the end of the interaction, Mickey would say goodbye to guests as he walked them out of the room himself. This was critical to create a smooth ending to the experience, and it gave the backstage operator and the character attendant time to prepare for the next interaction that was about to begin. The Talking Mickey meet and greet, officially referred to as Magic Words with Mickey, was one of the greatest creative risks ever taken by the Disney parks. The team of Imagineers that created the experience were able to combine practically every method and technique that had been developed for living characters up to that point. If all 4 cast members were experienced and communicating well, and the guest engaged with the interaction on its terms, the result was one of the most impressive experiences in theme park history. The interaction was fun, humorous, and often touching. Even understanding how the technology works and watching multiple interactions, the illusion of life that the Imagineers designed and the cast members executed was convincing and at times mind-blowing. It seemed like a culmination of everything that the Living Character Initiative had set out to do. Put simply, Magic Words with Mickey was magic. It felt like the future, and Imagineering made it clear that this was only the start of the next generation of character experiences. Fans and the general public were already amazed. If this was just the beginning, what could possibly be next?
I don't know. Is this LLMs?
After Disney's acquisition of Pixar in 2006, Bob Iger and Steve Jobs developed a friendship. Jobs acted as a sort of advisor to Iger during Iger's early years as Disney CEO. And one of the lessons that Jobs imparted was the business philosophy that companies should view their brands as bank accounts, something that you can deposit into or withdraw from. Iger would use this framing to diagnose one of the Disney park's biggest lingering issues, Disney's California Adventure. In the press, Iger relayed the bank account metaphor, explaining, quote, "Anytime you do something mediocre with your brand, that's a withdrawal. California Adventure was a brand withdrawal." Just 2 years after taking over as
bleak
CEO,
way to say
Iger
it.
announced that California Adventure would undergo a huge $1.1 billion renovation, which was more than the cost of building the entire park just 6 years prior. As part of the makeover, a new land would be created, themed to a single intellectual property, the Pixar film Cars. In addition to this, the park's entrance, originally reminiscent of a postcard, would be entirely redone with a new entry area named Buena
There's
Vista
something
Street.
really
The
clever
most common complaints with California Adventure was that the park
that
seemed rushed, underbuilt, and
Perjurer
lacking
does
in the detail
is
and
that
quality
when he
that Walt
like
and his Imagineers had established with
tells
Disneyland.
about the
solution
plan
to
for
this
the
was a
future
brand
of
deposit
things,
in the most
he
literal
will
sense.
not show
Disney
it
planned on turning to Walt
until
to save
like
the
it's
struggling
actually
California Adventure. Buena Vista
until
Street
it
would
finally
represent
comes
a
to fruition,
romanticized version of the
which
Hollywood that Walt
is a really
encountered
clever
when he
way of
arrived in
making you not
California in
know
1923.
whether this one
The new
actually
area
worked or
would
not.
feature a recreation of the Carthay Circle Theater, the theater in which Walt had premiered Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The entrance would also feature a new statue of Walt himself. Debuting nearly 2 decades after Disneyland's partner statue, this piece, named Storytellers, depicted a much younger Walt Disney, suitcase in hand with Mickey by his side. As if all of these additions were not enough to establish Walt's presence in Disneyland's second gate, one final touch was added. The 1901 Lounge was a bar that could only be accessed by members of Disneyland's exclusive Club 33. The new space was themed entirely to Walt. The lounge was named after the year of Walt's birth, and the walls were lined with pictures and memorabilia from Walt's life. Most notably,
That's just
in one of
weird.
the lounge's hallways, a light would periodically shine on a blank wall, revealing a shadow of Walt himself. Walt would appear, slowly look around, and then vanish. This was one of the first, if not the first time, that Walt had been reanimated. It would not be the last. Cars Land officially opened at
there's
Disney's
just a
California
ghost.
Adventure
There's
on
just
June
a ghost
13th,
in that
2012.
bar.
The new land was Disney's first entry into the modern,
You can get haunted
immersive
by Walt
single
Disney.
IP land genre. The new Cars Land was met with overwhelming praise from audiences. The scale and attention to detail won over guests, even those who were not fans of the Pixar film. And it turned California Adventure from the Disneyland Resort's failed other park into a tourist draw in its own right. The success of both Wizarding World and Cars Land would dethrone the theme park industry's favorite buzzword, interactivity, and replace it with a slightly different one, immersion. While these terms are not mutually exclusive, interactive rides and characters would take a backseat to the construction of elaborate,
Fuck, I gotta be on the pulse with this
recognizable
shit.
worlds. This led Disney and Universal to search for more properties set in environments that fit this bill. In September of 2011,
Okay, there we go.
Disney announced that they had signed an agreement with Fox and filmmaker James Cameron to bring a new land to Animal Kingdom based on the 2009 science fiction film Avatar.
I've
A few months
not
later,
seen Avatar.
Universal announced that they were
Fuck,
doubling
he's-
down on the
leave it
success of
out.
Wizarding World, with a new expansion themed to Harry Potter's magical shopping district, Diagon Alley. On October 30th, 2012, Disney announced that they were acquiring Lucasfilm from George Lucas, which included the rights to the Star Wars franchise. The announcement of the acquisition, which included the confirmation of a new trilogy of Star
Avatar
Wars
is
films,
okay, it's fine,
ignited
really.
hopes for a full-scale,
Like, my
immersive
understanding of
land
it is that
dedicated to
it
the
was pretty
franchise.
cool if you
In
saw it
April
when
of
it came out.
2014, a year and a half after the deal was closed, it was reported that Scott Trowbridge had been chosen to spearhead development on Star Wars theme park projects for Walt Disney Imagineering. Trowbridge was an obvious choice to head Imagineering's Star Wars portfolio. His involvement with Universal, especially his time developing Wizarding World, was his most apparent qualification, but the projects he had worked on since joining Imagineering were likely just as attractive. Trowbridge's experimentation with living characters,
don't
such
show
as
it
Otto,
again.
Destiny, and Talking Mickey, would bring
Okay, I
a
think we're still- I
forward-thinking
think
approach
we're
to the Star
back
Wars
to Disney.
projects that had the potential to elevate them above anything previously seen in the theme park medium. On top of this, Trowbridge had done a significant amount of experimentation with live-action role-playing, commonly referred
LARP.
to as LARPing, and he had begun to develop a story engine system that would assist in multi-narrative immersive experiences. The story engine empowered cast members to run a role-playing game while in character. The system helped to feed the performers information about the guests, in a similar way to what was described with the magic bands in the Talking Mickey patent. Rather than knowing general information about a guest, such as their hometown or birthday, Trowbridge's story engine would track information such as what story tasks guests had completed and what other characters they had interacted with. Trowbridge and other Imagineers
Didn't this
had even
fail
traveled to
spectacularly?
participate in popular live-action role-playing
At least I
events
know
for
it did in the
research,
Star Wars
such as
Hotel.
one trip to Sweden.
I
where
was
the team
about to say, yeah,
participated
Star
in a
Wars
multi-day
Hotel
LARP
coming
event
up.
themed to Battlestar Galactica and set on a spaceship. At D23 2013, a new iteration of the living character fortune-telling booth debuted. Named El Fortuno, the new animatronic character was a humanoid capable of moving only one of his arms. El Fortuno was not fully autonomous like the Great Destiny. Instead, he was remotely puppeteered and voiced by an actor, possibly through motion capture as opposed to a physical controller. El Fortuno did have several autonomous functions, such as face tracking to create realistic eye contact with the guests that he was interacting with. Around the same time as El Fortuno's debut, Trowbridge and his team were testing an immersive adventure named The Legend of the Fortuna, an attempt at a LARP-style experience in a theme park setting. It is not certain whether the two were related outside of their similar names, but it is easy to imagine an interactive animatronic such as El Fortuno as a character that a guest would encounter as they progress through a role-playing adventure. It would not be until August 15th, 2015 that Disney officially announced that it was building
Here
a
we
Star
go,
Wars-themed
baby.
land, with Bob Iger breaking the news at the D23 Expo. Disney's plans for Star Wars Land were big. For one, they were not just building one land.
We're building two.
One at Walt Disney World, at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and the other in Disneyland Park. Iger promised that the land, quote, will be occupied by many inhabitants, humanoids, aliens, and droids.
Every store and restaurant will be operated by local inhabitants, making each experience deeply immersive.
The following day, more details were given by the new chairman of Disney Parks and Resorts, Bob Chapek, who had previously been the head of Disney's consumer
The idea
products
of
division.
this is
Within
really
a year
cool.
of Chapek's promotion,
It's
it was
kind of a
announced
shame
that
it
Bruce
didn't
Vaughn
come
would
to
be
be.
exiting Walt Disney Imagineering. This meant that a new leadership team would be overseeing the development of Star Wars Land, which would be the largest single-themed land expansion in Disney Parks history, with each land costing around $1 billion to construct.
A new 14-acre immersive environment.
Chapek reiterated that, quote, the inhabitants of this remote frontier town will operate every store and restaurant. Every single thing will be in story. He also revealed concept art for a large creature that it appeared the guests would be able to ride. Chapek then introduced Scott Trowbridge, who discussed several other Star Wars experiences that would be coming to the parks in the interim while Star Wars Land was being developed. Star Wars Land might have been the most anticipated theme park project ever. The excitement was palpable, and with so few details provided and so much time before the land's opening, fans and the media looked anywhere they could for clues on what Star Wars
Luckily,
Land
this
would
went well,
entail.
yeah.
By this point in the mid-2010s, the projects underway in Imagineering were as secretive as ever. This was somewhat the fault of the internet, which was hungry for news and primed for circulating leaks. Also, with fandom culture at its peak, there were huge benefits to controlling the news cycle and waiting to drop announcements at fan conventions. Still, there were times where Imagineering had no choice but to release information about some of the ideas they were developing. The first was patents, which were legally required to be published. After the announcement of Star Wars Land, news outlets and blogs began following the patents that Disney was filing to see if any could be related to the theme park project. The most common findings were patents related to screen technology to fake a window looking out into space, and weapon simulation, such as lightsabers and blaster effects. The other common thread in the rumor mill
it's
was that
coming
Disney
together.
was patenting technology to enable non-human characters, namely droids, to free roam throughout the land. One patent described a system that would allow for a group of robots, referred to as, quote, robot swarms, very cool, to easily recognize spatially where each other are and respond to each other's actions.
That's
outside of patents,
really
there
sick.
was one other channel in which Disney's technology was most often disclosed. In 2008, Disney expanded their research efforts with the establishment of Disney Research, a series of global research and development labs set up at prestigious universities, which at the start of the program included Carnegie Mellon University and ETH Zurich. The Disney Research Labs straddle both academia and industry. The research is done in fields that have a direct commercial application to Disney's businesses, and Disney is given access to premier research departments innovating in fields that the company historically has not been a leader in, such as computer science. In turn, Disney supports the university's programs, funding projects, providing technology, and collaborating closely with faculty and students. The innovation and experimentation done within Disney Research is often published to benefit the greater academic community. Most of the research done at these university labs relate to the technical aspects of the animation process, such as new motion capture systems and rendering techniques. Sometimes, though, the labs will produce a research project that is clearly envisioned for application in Disney's theme parks. And this is when things get weird. Disney Research has published a lot of experiments that, at first glance, seem strange. Technology that doesn't appear to have an immediate application. For instance, one experiment called Ishin Denshin showcases a microphone that transmits sound through touch. The description reads, quote, "Secrets, messages, and whispers can then be transmitted from person to person in physical contact with each other. Bodies become a broadcasting medium for intimate, physical sound communication." The technology is presented in an almost abstract way.
That
The theme
sounds
park
weird.
application is not clear, but these students are really selling some intimate use cases. Hey man, what'd she say? You want to share with the class? Hey, whoa! Hey, does anybody have any ideas for Disneyland? Other oddities include fireworks that you can feel, a puppet suspended from a drone, and quasi-static cavity resonance for ubiquitous wireless power transfer, aka the room that charges everything.
Metallized room, and we're going to use standing electromagnetic waves that reverberate all around this room, providing wireless power to any device inside.
They say it's safe, but I'm not going in there. If you can believe it, the room that charges everything got wrapped up in the Star Wars Land rumor mill, where Walt Disney World News Today reported a rumor that the Star Wars Land trash cans will be elevated 6 inches off the ground, with the wireless charging technology placed under them in order to allow the roaming autonomous characters to recharge themselves. Outside of these oddities, most of the theme park related research done in Disney research labs relate to robotics and interactive characters, with Carnegie Mellon already established as an international leader in robotics education. When the Disney research program started, Professor of Computer Science and Robotics at Carnegie Mellon, Jessica Hodgins, said that one of the first projects the Pittsburgh lab would tackle was developing methods for people to interact with autonomous characters, either virtual or robotic. She added, quote, "Whether the character is a robot
There's so
or a
much
virtual
build-up
creation,
here.
the interaction issues are the same. We need to figure out what sensors to build and how to interpret and
I need
respond
to see the
human
apple
behavior.
fall. I
Some
needed
of the
to
lab's first
push it over
projects
the
were
edge and see
experimenting
what
with humanoid
where this
robots.
got to.
Disney Research attempted to transfer human motion capture data to a robot, teach a robot to stand from a seated position, and train a robot to balance on a ball. Another paper described the development of animatronic eyes that were suspended in fluid and could be moved using magnets. In 2012, Disney Research began releasing video of experiments being done with an A100 animatronic that had been modified to catch and throw a ball, with accompanying animations for when the robot made a mistake. Another paper tested new ways to explore giving costume performers control over their articulated heads, testing 3 different devices to do so: a sip puff switch, a bite sensor, and a tongue joystick. The tongue won in both error rate and reaction time, and none of the jokes I have written about this are
Tongue
worth it.
joystick
Throughout
is
the 2010s,
fascinating.
Disney Research
Who
continued
thought that
pushing
was a good
innovation
idea?
in robotics and social interaction between humans and machines. There was significant interest in increasing physical contact between an animatronic and a human, including experimenting with giving machines the capability to hand off objects and to shake hands. Researchers also
I'm not
developed
touching that.
soft-bodied robots in order to assist in safe human-to-animatronic contact. Disney Research was also testing aerial animatronics that could position themselves mid-air. Alongside studying the mechanical aspects of robots, researchers attempted to further their social capabilities, such as developing self-authoring dialogue and advanced story systems. In one paper, titled "The Robot Who Knew Too Much," researchers studied how a child reacted when a robot violated their privacy, by feeding the robot choices that the child believed that they had made in private. Researchers even measured the PSI of a child's hug. The work being done at Disney Research was compelling, and it aligned with Imagineering's long-term goal of a park with roaming autonomous characters. How much of this was preliminary research versus how much was meant for Star Wars Land or the rest of the parks had yet to be seen, but the studies continued to fuel excitement and provoke mass speculation about what Disney had in store for their new theme park projects. In late 2015, the first temporary Star Wars attractions, named Star Wars Launch Bay, opened at Disneyland and Disney's Hollywood Studios. Star Wars Launch Bay was an exhibit space, featuring several displays, photo ops, and enhanced character meet and greets. Upon opening, guests could encounter First Order troopers and meet Darth Vader and Chewbacca. These character interactions were enhanced in that they were all voice bank characters, capable of speaking pre-recorded lines
I mean, it's
of
got to be
dialogue.
so easy to voice Chewbacca.
Possession of plans that were stolen by a rebel spy.
No, definitely not.
Do not attempt to deceive us.
Unlike Talking Mickey, though, these were not soundboard characters, being operated by backstage puppeteers. Chewbacca was merely a chin strap that activated voice lines, like that toy Chewbacca mask. Hey, remember Chewbacca lady?
This is worth
It works like that.
I haven't thought about that in a
Vader and
while.
the First Order troopers were more complicated. These performers navigated their voice bank and short dialogue trees on their own, using advanced sensors hidden within their gloves. Rather than the simple flick of a finger or the less simple flick of a tongue, these sensors allowed the performers to trigger lines of dialogue by making distinct gestures.
It's too easy.
This was an ingenious method of giving control to a performer, as the line of dialogue could be emotionally similar to the gesture that triggered it, resulting in a more theatrical performance which improved the interaction.
You may approach. Wait. I sense someone.
While mostly fluid, there was a slight yet noticeable delay when triggering the dialogue, and the number of possible lines was minuscule compared to the complex Talking Mickey soundboard. As with so many living characters, the specific characters chosen mitigated these shortcomings. Antagonistic characters such as Vader and the Stormtroopers felt the most accurate when they were being curt and rude. So instead of exhaustive dialogue trees, they only needed a few authoritative commands, such as "Don't ask me that," "Stop talking," "Get out of here." And as for Chewbacca, who knows what that guy's saying? In June of 2016, a new character began roaming Star Wars Launch Bay at Disneyland. Named Jake the Droid, this original character was reportedly a test for the roaming droids that would populate Star Wars Land when it debuted. Jake was autonomous, using cameras and sensors to navigate spaces and avoid obstacles. He was even programmed to interact with some of the set dressing in Launch Bay. Unlike with the speculation around patents or Disney research projects, Jake was certainly a test for the upcoming land, only increasing the fervor surrounding the project. In August of 2017, a new playtest was briefly seen at Disney's California Adventure. In a quiet area on the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, Talking Mickey was found interacting with guests. This Mickey seemed to reuse some of the dialogue from previous iterations of Talking Mickey. But with
I love
far
that Talking
fewer
Mickey
options
just sort
and
of
a very
shows
different
up,
control
like-
system. It appears that this
He
Mickey
just-
was
he,
using
like,
the
sometimes
same
he's just
controls
there.
as the Launch Bay characters, navigating a limited dialogue tree using gestures. Unlike Magic Words with Mickey, which attempted to simulate an open conversation, this roaming Mickey politely railroaded the interaction by immediately launching
Talking
into
Mickey
a joke.
jump scare.
I just heard the funniest joke. What was the funniest joke? Why does Snow White always give all 7 dwarfs the same amount of gooseberry pie? Why? Why? Because she's the fairest one of all.
After the joke was over, he went straight to the picture segment and then immediately to the goodbye. Very little video from this test exists, but the following month, an even more interesting setup debuted. This time, Talking Mickey was joined by a talking Minnie Mouse and a talking
Oh,
Donald
they're
Duck.
expanding.
Similar to the solo roaming Mickey, this interaction appeared to be controlled by the performer's gestures. All 3 characters' dialogue trees were synchronized, and the interaction used a sort of domino effect, where the characters spent the majority of the interaction responding to each other rather than the guest.
The royal family of the jungle. Somebody even practiced his lion roar.
Wow. Oh my.
How about we get a photo where we all pretend we're lions?
Yes, please.
Another video showcased an attempt at an open interaction, in which the trio appeared to only communicate using reactive phrases instead of launching into a narrative show. This was accomplished by the intervention of the character attendant, using a similar technique to the one derived for Magic Words with Mickey. Except rather than this scenario being used sparingly to get Mickey out of a jam, in this version, the character attendant did most of the talking, while the trio could only respond with a few generic reactive phrases.
What was your favorite thing that you did today?
Oh, gosh, I'm not sure.
It's funny, we were just talking about this actually, and we think meeting everybody today was the best moments. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Donald.
Just like with the original Talking Mickey playtest, this setup was clearly imperfect and was only a starting point, but it showed that the Imagineers were attempting to get more interactive, free-roaming costumed characters into the parks, and eliminating the need for a backstage operator was a major step toward doing so. Disney continued to drip-feed news about Star Wars Land throughout 2016 and 2017. At the 2017 D23 Expo, the land's official name, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, was announced. During the parks panel, Trowbridge again
here we
reiterated
go.
that the land would be, quote, filled with characters, alien creatures, and droids, adding that it was, quote, a living place, a place where your choices matter. and a place where you can even earn a reputation. This implied the implementation of Trowbridge's story engine, and concepts were directly shown of guests being confronted by unique characters who had knowledge of their prior activities in the land. During the same panel, Chapek announced an entirely new Star Wars experience, a combination of a luxury resort and an immersive role-playing game. Few details were given on this themed hotel, but from what was said, the experience appeared to be a direct extension of Galaxy's Edge, where a guest's in-world history and reputation could follow them across both the land and the hotel. Along with all of the Star Wars projects, Disney was beginning to develop theme park attractions based on the popular Marvel Cinematic Universe, an effort that had begun with a re-theme of California Adventure's Tower of Terror. The new attraction, named Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, debuted on May 27, 2017. In January of 2018, the queue to Mission Breakout was given a new creature display. The Vilus were 3 autonomous, interactive, animatronic aliens. These creatures used cameras and sensors to react to guests as they passed by in the queue. Later in 2018, Chapek revealed some of the work that was being done to bring to life a new category of animatronic, named Stuntronics. These acrobatic robots were the evolution of the aerial animatronics control system that had originated in Disney research. And based on the footage shown, it was reasonable to assume that Disney intended to use the technology to simulate Spider-Man swinging through the air. By the late 2010s, interest in theme parks was at an all-time high. Social media, fandom culture, well-received
robots
additions,
aren't
and
meant to
exciting
move in
upcoming
certain
projects
ways.
all combined to push the
That
public's
one,
interest in themed
the aerial
entertainment
one,
to a level that was
a robot
unforeseen,
shouldn't move like
and
that.
Disney was primed to take advantage of
I didn't
the
like
moment.
that.
With all of the
I
living
mean, it was
characters
cool,
that
but I still
already
didn't like
existed,
it.
all of the characters that were being tested, and all of the characters that were promised for the future, it appeared that
Nope.
Disney was finally within reach of its goal. Their parks were about to be overflowing with free-roaming, autonomous, interactive characters. Except they weren't, because that didn't happen. When Star Wars Galaxy's Edge debuted on May 31st,
You were a
2019,
robot
it was not
racist.
teeming
Hey,
with droids or aliens.
I just
there were no
don't
roaming
think
animatronics. There weren't any new articulated costumed
pneumatic
characters. There weren't even
devices
remotely
like that
puppeteered
should
droids.
move like that.
Galaxy's Edge was advertised and seemingly designed to be the first theme park land to be populated by non-human beings, an idea that was intended to revolutionize the theme park experience and deliver on the promise of the Living Character Initiative, the stated goal, the end of the line.
I've been waiting my whole life for this.
But this did not come to pass. In fact, by the time Star Wars Galaxy's Edge debuted, most of the living characters had disappeared. They were not in the parks. Not Lucky the Dinosaur, not Remy, not Wally, not Luxo Jr., not Muppet Mobile Lab, not Jake the Droid, not even Talking Mickey. 2 decades of research into living characters.
Big Dino!
2 decades of developing methods and techniques to support interaction. 2 decades of attempting to take the next step in the pursuit of mechanical life. And outside of a few remnants, the parks appeared no more populated by living characters than when the initiative began. So, what happened?
Final chapter, chapter 10? Chapter 9. Tomorrow never arrives.
After Lucky the Dinosaur was shipped off to Hong Kong Disneyland in 2005, he was only seen in public 2 additional times, at the 2008 World Science Festival and at the 2009 D23 Expo. After this, Lucky was returned to Walt Disney Imagineering in Glendale. A planned Disney post explained that Lucky had, quote, retired to a dino farm in the country, and that, quote, after pulling that heavy cart for so long, apparently he got tired and called it a day. Reportedly, Lucky was still operational at Imagineering, and he greeted guests as part of the Backstage Magic Tour for a period of time. He would never make it back into the parks again. And former Imagineer Frank Mezzatesta has recently confirmed that while Lucky, quote, still exists,
They
his
killed
cart
Lucky
and the
the
ability to
Dino.
run him is gone. Cumulatively, Lucky spent less than a year in the parks before being retired. The Remy animatronic continued to entertain diners at the Rendezvous des Stars in Walt Disney Studios Paris until around 2012. He would last slightly longer at Epcot, with the small animatronic being removed from Chefs de France in October of 2013. He has not been seen since. Remy was in the park
Someone's
for a total
killing
of
them.
5 years. In April of 2010, Luxo Jr. stopped appearing on his perch in Pixar Place. The animatronic was operational for less than 1 year. After testing
They're
in numerous
hunting down
California
the
adventures, Muppet
animatronics.
Mobile Lab was sent to Epcot, where it entertained guests starting in August of 2007. This stint lasted 6 months, before the lab was moved to, of course, Hong Kong Disneyland. After this, Bunsen and Beaker were passed around a few more times before disappearing around 2013. The lab reappeared 3 years later in Epcot in October of 2016, where the Muppets performed for guests on an irregular basis, before being quietly discontinued in early 2019. In total, Muppet Mobile Lab entertained guests sporadically over the course of 12 years. Throughout 2008, the animatronic WALL-E made a number of appearances, including on the streets of Los Angeles, at science museums, at the premiere of the film, and at multiple stops on the film's press tour. One place that WALL-E did not appear was Disneyland. The closest he got was the D23 Expo, and after making a few appearances at internal Imagineering events, WALL-E disappeared. The animatronic seemingly never made it inside of a Disney park.
What
Throughout
the
the
fuck?
mid-2010s, Talking Mickey interacted with guests at the Magic Kingdom and became a staple of the park. Over time, the soundboard was subtly improved, such as the addition of dialogue referencing Mickey and the Roadster Racers, the Disney Junior show that succeeded Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Everybody Roadster ready?
On June 16, 2016, Shanghai Disney Resort opened its gates. This was the 6th Disney resort worldwide, the first to open in over a decade, and when it debuted, Mickey Mouse sported a new look, with subtle differences in his face, such as a rounder smile, taller eyes, and a smaller nose. This new direction was eventually made standard across the Disney parks, and in the summer of 2017, Talking Mickey transitioned to this style. Not only did the refresh make Talking Mickey consistent with his non-speaking appearances, but the new articulated head was reportedly significantly lighter and less taxing on the performer. These updates made what happened next all the more confusing. In January of 2018,
killed Talking
just
Mickey!
6 months after the new design debuted, reports emerged that Magic Words with Mickey was being retired, and that Talking Mickey would lose his voice in May of that year.
They
This
took his
report turned
tongue.
out to be true, and on May 12, 2018, Mickey chatted with guests at the Magic Kingdom for the final
What are they
time.
doing to them?
So glad you stopped by.
The following day, when guests met Magician Mickey backstage at the Town Square Theater, they were greeted by a standard, silent Mickey Mouse.
Kids of all ages?
Exactly.
Oh, very cute.
Mickey spoke with guests at the Magic Kingdom for just over 4
The
years.
dead character.
In the weeks leading up to the opening of Galaxy's Edge, rumors began to circulate that the roaming creatures and droids had been cut from the land. Originally, reports stated that this was only going to be for the first few months due to fears of overcrowding. But a user on Mice Chat claiming to be a cast member posted
Mice
2
Chat.
weeks before the land's opening that most of the interactive characters had been cut entirely, and many of them had never even been fabricated. This rumor appeared to be true, as when Galaxy's Edge opened to guests at Disneyland on May 31st, 2019, it was not bustling with interactive characters. The land did feature a few face characters, such as Rey, and costumed characters that had been previously seen in the parks, such as the First Order Troopers and Chewbacca. There were also a few animatronic aliens in displays around the land. Doc Ondar was an alien shopkeeper that appeared in a gift shop as an animatronic, although he was not interactive as depicted in concept art, and he was partitioned behind a significant amount of fencing. There were a few pre-programmed droids, such as DJ Rex, and a roaming R2-D2 that could be occasionally spotted in the Droid Depot gift shop. R2 would not venture very far, typically beeping and rolling around in the same area near the back of the store, and he was reportedly only there because he was for sale, for the low price of $25,000. As the months went by, it was clear that the rumors were true, and that the roaming droids, interactive aliens, and even rehearsed stunt shows had been cut from the land. A pared-down version of Trowbridge's story engine was launched within the Play Disney Parks mobile app, with short puzzles unlocking sound and lighting effects around the land.
I got it!
Not only did Galaxy's Edge lack many of the promised interactive elements, but by late 2019, living characters in the parks were few and far between. Many of the virtual puppetry shows, such as Turtle Talk with Crush and Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, remained in operation.
Okay, at least Turtle
as did
Talk
most
stayed
of the
alive.
Ride and queue-based characters, although Roz and Mr. Potato Head were only operated infrequently and were often set on non-interactive animation loops. Most living characters had either vanished or never made it into the parks. Why? There is no one reason, but there are a set of consistent challenges that have plagued every living character that has been either removed or cancelled, except for maybe one. The Luxo Jr. animatronic might have been specifically removed because the Norwegian lamp manufacturer Luxo sued Disney in late 2009, after Disney attempted to sell lamps of Luxo Jr. All of the other living characters, though, shared a set of common challenges. The first is technical issues. Any machine with a moving part has the potential to fail, Animatronics not only have multiple moving parts, but they are expected to operate for 12 hours a day, every day of the week. Disney and other theme parks have experienced significant issues keeping stationary animatronics, especially impressive ones, working reliably. It is not surprising that animatronics that are meant to roam free in a less controlled environment would be more prone to technical issues. Lucky the Dinosaur was no stranger to malfunctions, and his skin, which was specially developed to be lighter and more flexible, was not immune to wear and tear. Muppet Mobile Lab was a significant improvement over Lucky in several ways, namely that the contact point between the lab and the ground was not animatronic skin, but instead the tires of the Segway platform. Still, Bunsen and Beaker were not exempt from the occasional showstop, in which case the two slumped over as the lab fell forward.
Oh no!
Not only did malfunctions result in the immediate shattering of the illusion of life and a diminished guest experience, but it was a failure that occurred in an open guest area. When an animatronic malfunctions in a ride or a show, cast members can cycle out the attraction to allow maintenance to come in.
That's
and fix
horrifying.
The majority of the time,
it
parks are
was
so
like they
busy
just
and the rides
got
are
like
so
sniped.
multifaceted that operations typically just switches the animatronic to a diminished state for the rest of the day, or even just leaves it frozen in place. This is not a luxury that roaming animatronics have. Lucky and Muppet Mobile Lab were heavy machines that had used their own power and mechanical equipment to propel themselves to whatever spot in the parks that they were now lying dead in.
He's
Not only
dead!
did this block a previously open guest space in a busy park, but in order to revive them, maintenance either had to be done in front of guests or a second machine had to be brought in to rescue them. Wally experienced
This
a
would
similar
never
breakdown
happen to
at
Big
the
Dino?
D23 Expo. And the solution was to put a themed body bag
That's
over
right,
him
he's gonna
and
break
carefully
the
dolly
guests.
him
The guests
off
aren't
of the
gonna break
showroom
him.
floor. See, this works for Wally because he is canonically a robot. He's not dead, he's just out of battery. Oh my god. Oh no. Wally, oh my god. Not entirely unrelated to technical difficulties. Another challenge living characters face is liability issues. The Big Dino was deemed far too dangerous for the
Boo!
parks very early on in its development. Lucky mitigated this risk significantly by attaching the animatronic to a vehicle, but there is still a greater risk when interacting with an animatronic than there is in a typical costumed character meet and greet. This is especially true when young guests instinctively want to touch the character. This was the case with Wally. Reportedly, the animatronic Wally was heavy, with some rumors stating that it weighed as much as 700 pounds. While the exact number was never released, Wally does appear to be pretty heavy based on the way this guy has to put everything he's got into dollying him off the showroom floor.
That's true,
Guests
he's
were forced to stand
massive.
on a red circle when taking pictures with Wally, which could have been a way to prevent the animatronic from harming the guests. One of the biggest challenges that living characters face is budgets. This issue is not simply that these experiences cost money. It is specifically about who is paying for them. The Walt Disney Company, like any megacorporation, is a parent company that owns several subsidiaries. The Walt Disney Company operates Walt Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products, which manages Walt Disney World, which manages the 4 Walt Disney World theme parks. Each park and hotel has its own leadership team and budget, and the goal of this fragmentation is to encourage managers to operate, maintain, and streamline their respective business. Walt Disney Imagineering is a design firm made up primarily of engineers and artists. They almost always want to create the coolest, biggest, and most impressive project that money and the laws of physics will allow. Park operators are much more concerned about logistics, efficiency, and reliability. While Imagineers still want their attractions to work and park operators want their attractions to be cool, both parties have different priorities. When development on a project nears completion, there's a clear handoff period when Imagineering turns the attraction over to park operations, who is then tasked with staffing, operating, and maintaining the ride. So how do living characters fit into this setup? Most of the living character projects started within Imagineering's research and development department and relied on Imagineering budgets for funding. Certain living characters might have received support from elsewhere, such as Wally, who more than likely received funding from Pixar's marketing department. In general though, the living characters were R&D projects using R&D funding, and even when they ventured into the park for a playtest, these appearances were largely funded by R&D. These limited-run playtests were often as much about gathering information as they were pitching park operations on the concept. Sometimes, the parks felt that R&D had come up with something that was valuable to operations. The virtual puppetry setup helped with capacity, it was cheap to operate, and it did not require frequent or costly maintenance. Lucky the Dinosaur was the opposite. While the Imagineers attempted to get the operation of Lucky down to 1 puppeteer and 1 handler, several cast members were necessary to create a barrier around the large machine. Factoring in maintenance and operating costs, park operators were not interested in Lucky as a permanent attraction. Muppet Mobile Lab was an improvement over Lucky.
Nobody
and it was
wanted
reliable
Lucky?
and cost-effective enough that Epcot Operations funded its return in 2016. After a few
But-
years, the lab was cut from the park's entertainment lineup, and the experience disappeared once again. The willingness that Operations has to host a living character is also heavily influenced by staffing requirements. In Disneyland, puppeteers are typically the jurisdiction of the American Guild of Variety Artists, a union that Disney has had multiple disputes with, including a public spat in 2017 that resulted in significant negative publicity for the company.
Those darn
This was one of the
unions.
rumored reasons that Chapek did not want puppeteered characters or stunt performers in Galaxy's Edge, instead opting to have all of the immersive character work done by regular cast members. These cast members, in addition to doing their actual jobs, were expected to stay in character, using specific vocabulary and maintaining consistency with the land's backstory.
And they've all created their own stories, and they did this on their own, by the way. So I think we've got more characters than we ever even dreamed of.
This was the cheapest and arguably most duplicitous course of action possible, especially since this shortcut to an immersive populated land was only possible because it took advantage of the general excitement for the project and the Star Wars franchise in general. So of all of these operational issues with living characters, which contributed to the closure of Magic Words with Mickey? Surprisingly, there was an official internal reason for the removal that was given to the cast members staffing the attraction. But oddly, it had nothing to do with technical difficulties, liability, or even cost. Management claimed that the decision was made due to issues with character integrity, specifically consistency between Talking Mickey and Mickey's other appearances throughout the parks. Apparently, children found it confusing that when they met Mickey at Magic Kingdom, he spoke to them, but when they met him at the other parks, he was silent. This confusion and frustration extended to adult guests, who would often endure long waits to meet Mickey at other locations expecting him to talk, only to find that he was silent when they reached the end of the line. On top of this, there was a consistency issue internally at the Town Square Theater. Magic Words with Mickey was never explicitly advertised as an interaction with Talking Mickey. It was only labeled as a Mickey meet and greet. On some days,
Well, that's just
if there was an
foolish.
operational issue, such as short staffing or an unexpectedly busy day at the park, a standard static Mickey would be added to one of the rooms to assist with the attraction's throughput. This was extremely disappointing to guests, especially since many had waited over an hour to meet Talking Mickey. These were real problems, but were they enough to warrant the attraction's closure? Talking Mickey did experience his fair share of mechanical failures.
And look into my eyes! Is it the Queen of...
Luckily, since this was a costume performer in an isolated location, this did not necessitate an exposed and elaborate rescue operation. Also, unless his eyes were the cause of the malfunction, Mickey's articulated head failing usually just resulted in him becoming the normal-looking, static version of the character. Not ideal, but more of an escalator becoming stairs situation. Talking Mickey was also a liability concern, not for the guest, but for the performer. The Talking Mickey head was heavy, and while the newer versions were reportedly lighter, there was still significant strain put on performers, which led to injuries. But all of these concerns paled in comparison to the issue of money.
They just
While
had
it
to.
differs
They
from the
just had
company
to
line,
build.
It is generally believed
a-
that expense was the
an
real reason that
animatronic
Talking
rig
Mickey was removed.
that the
fact that
performer
4 cast
could
members were
sit
required
in,
to achieve
could
a
stand
single
in,
interaction made
that
the
would
cut attractive to
support
operations, and this likely
Mickey,
led to the
for
change
instance,
more
this
than any
head.
other reason. So if the main problems with living characters have been persistent since their inception, how has the Living Character Initiative, or at least the idea of it, survived for so long in such a profit-driven company? Well, this is actually one of the main purposes of R&D, to experiment with new ideas in an environment that is shielded from many of the economic pressures that are placed on other divisions of the company. Still, while R&D timelines are longer and failure is more encouraged, results aren't irrelevant. And after 2 decades,
Should have put a
there has
V8
to be
engine in
something else
Talking
driving
Mickey?
the continued
No,
push
just
for living characters.
get an
There is no doubt
get
that
some,
virtual puppetry
perhaps
was
a
massive success
pneumatic
for R&D, and this
exoskeleton
early win contributed to the continuation of the initiative. From the perspective
you
of
can
guests,
pilot
the success was evident. The result was an attraction that they could experience.
to hold more shit
However,
in it. You can
R&D
hold a better
often
power
accomplishes invisible
system.
wins that are too technical
You can
or
hold
banal
heavier
to explain to
heads.
the public, but are hugely valuable to the company. The Big Dino, for instance, is an abject failure if the metric for success is
Grip
a permanent
strength of
attraction. But during its development, Imagineers
50
experimented
pounds.
with electric motors, walking algorithms, and gyroscopes, and that research could be applied to other projects. If this development period results in a patent, This gives Disney an edge on their competitors, even if they do not have an immediate application for the technology. While not as exciting as the end use of a roaming animatronic, this experimentation still benefits the guest experience in the end, just in a way that is more difficult to track. That said, if it is difficult for the guest to understand, it is likely difficult for management and executives to understand as well. So there has to be benefits outside of incremental innovation that is keeping the initiative alive. One of these, let's call them less than noble reasons, is media coverage. Previewing new animatronics and innovative character experiences results in good press, which is free advertising for the parks, if you don't count the millions of dollars that it costs to develop them. Sometimes living characters are only revealed to the press once it has been determined that they will not make it into the parks. This media rollout is thus a way to recoup some of the time, energy, and money that was spent on development. This was almost certainly the case with the Big Dino, which was canceled sometime in early 2001. And Imagineers probably knew that it was not going to make it into the parks before that. Despite this, it was featured in a Discover magazine article in March of 2001 and a Travel Channel special that aired in 2002. See, stuff like this is a bit misleading, right? The Disney parks are not a product line in the traditional sense, and the Big Dino was not just a product that didn't make it to market. Theme parks are a single ticket experience. So when you wedge the giant robot dinosaur that has been canceled in between two attractions that are actually opening next year, that is confusing to consumers.
So don't be surprised if you see an audio animatronics dinosaur running through the park someday.
Oh right, they didn't say that I'll see this in the parks, they just said that I shouldn't be surprised if I did. Okay, deal, I won't be. Even more misleading than marketing a living character project that has been canceled is creating a living character experience exclusively for marketing. On December 5th, 2012,
vertical slice
Disney
shit.
debuted a new type of living character, an aerial dragon that flew above Magic Kingdom, flapping its wings and shooting fire from its mouth. The character was accomplished by modifying a powered parachute. The cart that the pilot would sit in was themed to appear as the dragon, and a black canopy was chosen so that when the aircraft was lit correctly, the parachute disappeared and the dragon appeared to fly on its own. This incredible aerial character was only seen one time, for one night, during a media preview for New Fantasyland. The dragon was heavily reported on by the media in attendance, and it was mentioned in countless articles in the same breath as the attractions that regular guests would actually be able to see and experience. This is a gray area of public relations, and one that can be especially lucrative to large corporations in the age of new media. It's not illegal to have a press event. It's not false advertising to fly a dragon above the park to celebrate the opening of a new land. And if a bunch of journalists report on how cool it is and don't question whether it is a regular offering or not, that's on them. And if they do ask, as Ricky Briganti of Inside the Magic did, you can just do what Disney spokesperson Rick Sylvain did and say, quote, "You never know where or when a dragon might appear again." I guess I don't. The description of Disney's official video of the dragon admits that it was for a one-night only event, which turned out to be true as it has never been seen flying again. Even if the media knows the dragon is for a one-time only event, it influences their general perception of the product that they are supposed to be reporting on and sometimes reviewing. It's a strategy, it works, but it can lead to frustration from your customer base. And doesn't it just feel wrong? Luckily, they only did it once. Hey, R2-D2's in Galaxy's Edge and not just for sale at the Droid Depot. That's a living character, why didn't I? Oh. Whoa, BB-8, that's awesome. He can roll around and... Oh. Hondo Inaka, great costume, not a living character, but still pretty cool. X-Wing drones, yeah, you get it. When you spend years promoting a land as a living, breathing place where you can immerse yourself in your own Star Wars story and build an environment that appears to be designed for living character sightings and interactions, and then you accomplish this for one day, the day that media is there to review it, regular guests get a little upset, and it's not hard to see why. Again, the clinical reason is this comes down to budgets. These character sightings and aerial events aren't paid for by Imagineering or park operations, but by the marketing, PR, and events teams, who often have healthy budgets to promote the land and pull these types of experiences off. But it, sucks. Speaking of sucks, another reason that living characters are appealing to higher-ups is because of Wall Street. Historically, technology companies have outperformed entertainment companies on the stock market,
I gotta watch the
achieving
vid on
higher
Galaxy's Edge
valuations and
next.
growth at a faster rate. This is mostly due to the predictable, linear nature of the entertainment industry versus the very volatile, speculative nature of the tech industry. A
This is
technology
your
company
fault.
that promises
Oh no,
a
you have to
groundbreaking
watch
product
media
of
because I
immeasurable
watch
worth
media.
will likely
Because
perform
you're a
better on the stock
follower.
market than an entertainment company whose slate of films can only
You're a
perform so
follower.
well, and whose theme parks can only be attended by so many people. The
You
Walt Disney
need
Company
me.
is an entertainment company, not a tech company. They use technology, sometimes they invent technology, but at their core, they're selling entertainment products, not tech products. This limits their ability to achieve infinite growth, which is a very real thing, I'm told. This belief from higher-ups that living characters are appealing to investors
Right
is
now,
clear
I'm
when
not
reading
watching
the
the I'm
literature
not
that
watching the
Disney
Jenny
writes
Nicholson video
specifically
right
for
now.
shareholders.
Maybe later,
In the Walt Disney
but not
Company's
right now.
2003 annual report, an entire section is dedicated to
We got 30 more
unforgettable
minutes,
character
folks, at
encounters,
least.
including a paragraph dedicated to Lucky the Dinosaur and a shout-out to
Yeah, we got
Stitch's
about 30
picture
more
phone,
minutes.
an attraction so small that it never even showed up on the park's map, and yet here it gets its own block of text. They even got the name wrong. It's not called Meet Stitch. The FTC might be interested to hear about this. In the 2004 annual report, Disney made it clear to investors that a major initiative was, quote, bringing favorite characters to life, with a shout out to Turtle Talk with Crush, which was billed as, quote, the most magical foray yet into the realm of living characters. There was also a section on building closer guest relationships through new technology, and oh my god, it's my boy Nemo. I'm investing Nemo to the moon, hodl on Nemo. Finally, one of the biggest reasons that the living characters persist within Disney is that they function as an appeal to legacy. The legacy of Disney magic, Imagineering, and most importantly, Walt himself. The Walt Disney Company has found value investing into Walt's legacy. When Imagineering R&D spends what in the grand scheme of things is a small amount of money on projects that are simply fun, interesting, or out there, this harkens back to the spirit that many believe that Walt embodied, a spirit of creativity and innovation, one of the main reasons that consumers have continued to choose Disney over its competitors. The living character experiments not only reflect the spirit of Walt, but they can be viewed as a direct continuation of Walt's work with animatronics. And whenever it is time for the public to hear about a living character, marketing is not going to let you miss the connection.
Walt once said the best way to predict the future is to invent it.
Walt's vision drives a lot of what we do.
I'm not so certain that we're not doing with these worlds today exactly what Walt Disney would have wanted to do.
That's all Walt Disney wanted to do, was make magic real.
While roaming animatronics and interactive characters function successfully as a legacy play for the company, they still require a significant amount of work for something that cannot be easily integrated into the parks. In order to keep up with Walt's spirit of innovation, R&D has to keep coming up with new ideas, the next step in an initiative that has still yet to make a drastic difference in the guest experience. And after 2 decades and probably hundreds of millions of dollars, at what point do you ask yourself, if we're gonna do all this work as a way to evoke the spirit of our dead
Please tell me
founder,
they made
it'd be great if we could just bring
Yes!
him back.
Yes!
Can we just bring him back?
I was hoping that the foreshadowing was leading here.
The final film of Bruce Lee. 4.5 years in production.
People always laugh about these shots in the dressing room with the cutout scene in the mirror. Subsequently, they only use clips of Bruce taken from his other films.
You lose, Carl Miller.
Or shots of doubles.
And so begins the game of death.
Here he is, Forrest Gump, right here. Forrest Gump, John Lennon.
The Dick Cavett show was a little different because it was taken from television material. The set was duplicated to look just like the old Dick Cavett set.
His legacy as one of the greatest dancers in the history of film remains untarnished and unmatched.
They haven't done anything as good as Fred Astaire since.
Oliver had died, how to bring him back by using the shots and writing a scene around it.
It was like having several pieces of a jigsaw puzzle with several pieces missing.
Look at this. I'm supposed to fill these out. Now look here. Now just stop it. It upsets me.
I have a dream. This nation will rise up.
Before you can inspire, you must first connect. And the company that connects more of the world is Alcatel.
There was something surreal about Maryland. There was a certain lack of reality for me, and it was just unbelievable.
Dre brought them one performance that truly blew their minds.
An incredibly realistic, computer-generated likeness of Tupac.
A new commercial is raising some eyebrows online. Hepburn's sons released a statement saying that they're proud of the commercial and that their mother always loved chocolate.
We needed to finish this movie to honor Paul's legacy that became our #1 goal.
Some of the objections makes references to the Fred Astaire with the Dirt Devil, Audrey Hepburn selling chocolate. I'd like to think that the role that we gave Tarkin in this film is one that Peter Cushing would have been happy to play.
That one was terrible because he didn't need to be there.
This is an example of deep fake, a word that combines the terms deep learning and fake. It's an advanced form of artificial intelligence, making the process of creating fake identities much easier.
I watch over you every day, and I'm always with you.
Artificial intelligence software that can turn anything you type into art.
With just a few clicks.
I think that we're right on the edge. Technology
Oh,
is a double-edged
here we
sword.
go.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just that it's double-edged. That's the best way I can describe it.
It kind of scares me, to be honest.
It should scare you.
Didn't expect a Joe Rogan mention.
In 1881, sculptor Leonard Vogt published an essay recalling the multiple encounters that he had with Abraham Lincoln. The meetings between Vogt and Lincoln had occurred prior to Lincoln's ascent to the presidency, and these interactions were primarily to document Lincoln's stature for busts and sculptures, which included the casting of a life mask, the same mask that would serve as the basis for Walt's Lincoln animatronic. By the time Vogt released his essay, Lincoln was already regarded as an icon. His image would be marked as one of solemn determination. He would act as a model for honesty, humility, leadership, and perseverance for generations to come. Vogt, who had multiple isolated and lengthy interactions with Lincoln, recalled of the now legendary man, funniest guy I ever met. Specifically, Vogt said that Lincoln would, quote, talk almost unceasingly, telling some of the funniest and most laughable of stories. But he talked little of politics or religion during those sittings. He said, I am bored nearly every time I sit down to a public dining table by someone pitching into me on politics. This aspect of Abraham Lincoln, the human, would not live on in Abraham Lincoln, the legend. While Lincoln's humor has by no means been erased from history, this nuance has not survived into the public's collective memory of Honest Abe. And the more common depiction of Lincoln, the brave president who bore the weight of a fractured nation, was the one that Walt and his
He was mostly a
Imagineers
6'5" weird little
this
guy.
representation of a dignified, serious Lincoln was not inaccurate. It reflected a significant portion of the real, mortal Lincoln, and it perfectly resembled the immortal legend that Lincoln had become. The animatronic's 5-minute speech did not require the frivolous
He didn't even have a
complexities
deep
and random
voice.
hypocrisies that plague every real human being. In order to bring the 16th president back to life, Disney only needed to depict the simple Lincoln, the idealized Lincoln, functionally, the real Lincoln. Ironically, toward the end of his life, Walt Disney feared the same fate was befalling him. He told Imagineer Marty Sklar one day in 1965, quote, Walt Disney is a thing, an image that people have in their minds, and I spent my whole life building it. I do a lot of things that Walt Disney wouldn't do. Walt Disney doesn't smoke. I smoke. Walt Disney doesn't drink. I drink. I'm not Walt Disney anymore.
That's
Walt's death
terrifying.
The following year cemented this idea, with his name and legacy remaining the company's driving force for years after his passing. Over time, as Disney's leadership changed and the company found its creative footing without him, Walt's image was boiled down even further, and much like Lincoln, he became less of a complex individual and more of a figure that represented a set of core ideals. Walt's image became one of a creative risk-taker, a resilient, hard-working innovator, and more than all else, a dreamer. As the company he left behind grew into the world's most powerful media empire, Walt continued
Isn't that
to
what you're
play an
doing as a
important
VTuber,
role, a
Hime-chan?
role that would soon become even
Kind
more
of?
critical.
But different.
We find ourselves in 2023. A lot has happened in the world of Disney and the world in general since we left off in 2019. Bob Iger resigned as CEO, coincidentally 2 weeks before a global pandemic, and Bob Chapek was named his successor. When the parks eventually reopened, Chapek raised prices
I have
and
thoughts on
introduced
that,
new
but
upcharges. He fought with
I'm
Hollywood
gonna let them
talent,
resurrect
Fear House
Walt
at
Disney
Imagineering,
first, like
saw
a
Disney
fucked
become
up
a target of the culture war, grew a beard,
animatronic
was fired, and was
necromancer.
immediately replaced by Bob Iger. Just 3 years after the company had experienced unprecedented success in both the parks and at the box office, Disney found themselves in one of the worst situations in the company's 99-year history, at least from a cultural standpoint. The inconceivably large corporation that Disney had become had never appeared so lost, so without identity, so soulless. It was a full-on brand crisis, which meant it was time for a brand deposit. On February 15th, 2023, Disney released a preview of Disney 100 The Exhibition, a traveling walkthrough exhibit created to celebrate the company's centennial. At the beginning of the gallery was a small presentation space, in which a short film would introduce the exhibit to guests. At the end of this video, Mickey appeared on a magic carpet and cast a spell. Pixie dust shot from his hands, and from it re-emerged Walter Elias Disney.
There's a lot of satisfaction in developing ideas into reality when we consider...
I don't like it.
We really study it.
For just under 60 seconds, Walt imparted some of his creative and business philosophies before snapping his fingers and disappearing once again into a cloud of pixie dust. This Walt was resurrected through a collaboration between Disney Studio Lab, Disney Research, and Industrial Light and Magic, and it was achieved through the use of archival video, archival audio, and artificial intelligence tools. The result was interesting. The press release stated that the Disney archives provided footage of Walt from the 1960s, which then went through their, quote, super-resolution AI upscaler to convert the archival footage to high definition. But this is only part of what was done here. This Walt is not just an upscale of existing footage, and there are several clues that indicate this. First, Walt's words are his own in his own voice, but Disney revealed that they used two different archival recordings that were then spliced together. So there is no one take of Walt presenting this speech to begin with. The second piece of evidence is look at it. Look at his weird tall face. Look at his creepy weird smile. Look at what his hands are doing. Look at how he doesn't rotate his shoulders at all. Look at how his head doesn't move like it's attached to his body. AI Walt received mixed reactions upon its debut, with many fans challenging the quality and ethics of the digital revival. However, a true backlash failed to materialize. The majority of those that visited the exhibit either thought that it was an impressive effect that brought Walt to life before them, or they didn't even realize that it was AI to begin with. Essentially, Disney got away with it. The Walt Disney Company needed Walt's presence more than ever, and now he was back, albeit in a brief, uncanny, and digital fashion. Was this just a one-off thing for the centennial, or were they testing the waters for something else?
What did they do?
On August 10th, 2024, at the D23 Expo in Anaheim, California, Disney unveiled plans for their upcoming theme park projects. While most of the developments that were discussed would take years to complete, one show was announced that would open in the summer of 2025, to coincide with the 70th anniversary of Disneyland. This special attraction was planned for the Main Street Opera House, where Abraham Lincoln had been performing for nearly 60 years. The new show would be in the same vein as Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln.
No.
President appearing in animatronic form, a new animatronic of Walt Disney would take the stage. Disney Experience's chairman, Josh D'Amaro, who had taken over the role from Chapek when he had been promoted to CEO, explained that a Walt animatronic was an idea that had been, quote, whispered in the hallowed halls of Imagineering for years, maybe even decades.
We just had to wait for innovation to catch up with our dreams.
Our dreams of necromancy
would be built on a rotating stage, and after the first year, Walt and Lincoln would take turns speaking to audiences throughout the day. D'Amaro claimed that he and Imagineering understood how much of a responsibility the figure was, and he explained that members of the Disney family had already been consulted. During the panel, D'Amaro introduced Roy P. Disney, Roy E. Disney's son, and Walt's
Are they all fucking named Roy?
D'Amaro claimed was moved during his preview of the animatronic. Imagineer Tom Fitzgerald spelled out the challenges with creating a figure
This
of Walt,
is true
including,
technomancy.
quote, his expressive face, those eyebrows, and the way he used his hands to punctuate his thoughts and ideas. Fitzgerald said the new figure would, quote, incorporate features and innovations that had never been achieved before. It will be the most lifelike human figure we have ever created.
I thought we were going to get a
The project was
hologram.
said to include
I
several
was like,
feats
there's
of
no way
animatronic
it's going to be a
technology,
full
which
animatronic.
Imagineering referred to as moonshots. This included new methods for creating realistic human skin and a lean to stand motion that would allow Walt to perform one of his iconic desk leans. Imagineers also boasted that they were placing every strand of hair individually onto Walt's scalp, and that they had found a way to achieve the twinkle in Walt's eye. Apparently, those that knew Walt claimed that he had a twinkle in his eye when he spoke, and the Imagineers planned to achieve this glint by creating special eyes with a corneal bulge, which would refract light and result in Walt's eye sparkle. Walt did not ever have a life mask taken of his face, but molds were taken of his hands, which would serve as the basis for the hands of the animatronic. Many fans were thrilled that the company was again investing in Walt's legacy, and the care that was being put into the project was clearly sincere.
This is horrifying.
The concept was not foreign to audiences, as a Walt animatronic had been discussed for decades. An internal Disneyland
Like, Lincoln
newsletter
is
from
one thing.
1986 specifically requested that cast members stop proposing the idea
But this is
because
like
of how frequently the concept was submitted.
not
This
even
newsletter
100
also
years
explained
since the
why
guy
one would not be
died.
built, explaining that the philosophy at the time was that, quote, Disneyland itself is a memorial to Walt's creativity in a way that could never be captured in an animated figure. Imagineering had considered the idea.
Can you
numerous
commission an
times, and
animatronic of
former
me when I
Imagineer
go?
Eddie
You're not
Soto
going.
revealed that he had
You're not
once
allowed.
done concept work for a show
No.
featuring a Walt Disney animatronic, which was also proposed for the Main Street Opera House. Of course, the announcement also drew
I
its
took
fair share of criticism from fans that felt that it was disrespectful. This sentiment was immediately fueled by one of Walt's grandchildren, Joanna Miller, who spoke out against the figure, explaining that she was, quote, overwhelmed and angry, and that it, quote, shows a lack of respect to her grandfather. In another post a few months after the announcement, Miller doubled down on her initial position, and additionally claimed that Walt had told those that he worked with that he never wanted to be made into an animatronic. Miller also recalled that her mother, Walt's daughter, Diane Disney Miller, rejected a proposal for a Walt animatronic to be placed in the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco.
These
After
are all the
speaking
same
out,
arguments
Miller
against
was
Lincoln
invited to
animatronic too.
Imagineering to see the progress on the animatronic, but she was not
I
swayed.
guess.
In an interview with the LA Times, she reported, quote, I think I started crying. It didn't look like him to me. Thus, Miller stuck to her claim that the animatronic was disrespectful and directly against Walt's wishes. All of the accounts that Walt expressly stated that he did not want an animatronic made of him are all second or third hand, and there is no known record of Walt or his colleagues establishing this alleged belief. Walt Disney Imagineering confirmed this, although they clearly have a vested interest in the matter. Imagineer Jeff Schaefer
don't have vids
Moskowitz
of Lincoln
stated, quote,
speaking, and I
in
also
all
think
our
that was a
research,
bad
we
idea
never
too."
found any documentation of Walt saying that. We know that it's anecdotal and we can't speak to what was told to people in private. A little over a week after Joanna's explosive post circulated, other Disney family members voiced their support for the project. The board of the Walt Disney
I'll support
Family
anything
Museum,
for enough money.
which includes 5 of Walt's grandchildren and 3 of his great-grandchildren, shared a statement expressing enthusiasm for the animatronic, and 2 of Walt's grandchildren, Chris and Tamara Miller, went on the record expressing their support. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't really make a difference what Walt's family thinks. In most cases of simulated resurrection, especially of the digital variety, companies are required to seek approval from the estate of the deceased, as they hold the name and likeness rights to the individual. This was not the case with Walt Disney. This is because, in the early 1950s, Walt assigned his name and likeness rights to a company that he owned, named Walt Disney Inc. He then charged Walt Disney Productions a fee to use his name and likeness in marketing and merchandise. Between 1953 and 1981, Disney paid Walt's company, which he left to his wife and daughters, over $45 million for the use of Walt's name and likeness. In 1982, the Disney family sold Walt's name and likeness, as well as a few other assets, to Walt Disney Productions for $46.2 million. Whenever the Walt Disney Company has wanted to use Walt's likeness for something, such as the partner statue, they only sought permission from Walt's family out of respect and in the hopes of gaining their support. Legally, the company can do whatever it wants, a circumstance that was the direct result of decisions made by Walt, his wife, and his daughters. Discourse continued to surround the animatronic as its debut drew closer. For such a small attraction, the anticipation was immense, and Imagineering kept the figure closely guarded, not allowing any imagery of the animatronic to leak ahead of its reveal. In February of 2025, the attraction was delayed from its original May opening date, which was set to coincide with the start of Disneyland's 70th anniversary celebration, to July 17th, Disneyland's actual 70th anniversary. It would not be until July 13th, 2025, that previews were held and the first glimpses at the Walt animatronic were finally released. Everyone, from supporters to opponents
I
to
need
the
to know if
undecided,
they got a
were
voice
eager to
actor
see
for
the
Walt
results.
or if they did
Walt
an AI.
Disney, one of the world's most recognizable figures, the namesake of the world's largest media empire, was back in the park that he had founded 70 years prior. He may have died in 1966, but nearly 6 decades later, he had returned by way of the very technology that he had helped pioneer. a technology that had since been innovated even further, allowing for his resurrection to be the most realistic yet. Walt Disney was back, and the world was anxious to witness his homecoming.
You know, I was stumped one day when a little boy asked, "Do you draw Mickey Mouse?" And I had to admit I do not draw anymore. Well, I said, sometimes I think of myself as a little bee. I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody.
Well, if you think this doesn't look like Walt Disney, just imagine how much this didn't look like Abraham Lincoln. What did we really expect here? I think our brains have been broken by the onslaught of advancements in digital media generation and humanoid robotics, that we sometimes forget that our physical reality still has fundamental limitations. Walt looks a bit puffy, sometimes he looks like a rabbit, the eyes are a little beady, could be the glint, and sometimes he looks like a rabbit. But throughout the performance, there are moments where it looks good, really good. The lean to stand segment is amazing, and there is clearly more expression in his face than with previous animatronics. Still, the figure reveals its limitations as often as it showcases its capabilities. This is actually the reason that sculptor Blaine Gibson opposed an animatronic of Walt. Not on the grounds that it was disrespectful or that Walt expressed that he didn't want it, but because of the unavoidable constraints. Gibson explained, quote, "I know just how crude our medium is. Relative to the human figure, you can't get Walt's smile. You'd have to move from a scowl to a smile because Walt at times would get a twisted up expression and one eyebrow would go up. He had a facial range that was absolutely beyond our capability. Lincoln is believable because we have no personal memories or films of his speech and mannerisms. Walt was a man whose movements meant something, and his expressions were so lively and enthusiastic. You can't get that with an animatronic figure." Technology has improved in the 3 decades since Gibson presented his case against a Walt animatronic, but many of the obstacles clearly still exist. Critics can sit back and dissect all of its flaws: the wide head, the lack of dynamic lighting, the processing on the archival audio.
You know, there's a lot of satisfaction in developing ideas into realities.
But even if all of these issues were addressed and technology improved dramatically, the fundamental reality remains that this is not a human, and it never will be. But does that necessarily mean that it isn't Walt Disney? From a certain point of view, this animatronic is the immortal Walt, the inoffensive, safe, corporate-approved figure, the only one that has a chance of living forever. Walt, over 5 decades after his death, continues to provide Disney with something invaluable: a personality, a set of ideals, and a human connection that can pierce through the corporate machine. Walt's path to immortality is dependent on his utility to the company that he started, a company that has transformed into an unrecognizable, incomprehensibly large, living machine, a machine that is now puppeteering him as a surrogate, as proof that the organization still has a singular human voice, minus the risks that come with actually having one. But the question remains, would Walt have wanted this? I think I have an answer, and with all due respect to those with strong opinions on the matter, I'm going to say with confidence that the answer to whether Walt would have wanted this or not is that it doesn't matter. Sorry, buddy, you invented this. You did this to Lincoln, a guy who didn't know that this technology was even possible. People told you to your face that it was weird and wrong, and you did it anyway. You defended it for years, saying that it was fine. So guess what? It's fine. And don't give me that excuse of Walt was too humble to want his park to be about him. You know who else was reported to be quite humble? Abraham Lincoln. This is on you, Walt. Welcome back. As satisfying as it is from a narrative perspective that Walt's image has been revived and trapped in a prison of his own design, sharing a stage with his first victim, there is still the lingering question: can the Walt Disney Company pull off a theme park fully populated by living characters? Throughout Disney's struggles during the pandemic, the research group continued to publish work. In October of 2020, Disney Research published their progress on simulating gaze with a robot. And to clarify, that is gaze with a
gaze.
These experiments were part of an effort to further the social connection between humans and robots, which was not helped by the fact that researchers used the scariest, most murder-eyed robot I've ever seen in my life. In April of 2021, Disney Research unveiled a project that had been at least 3 years in the making, And oh my god, is that the Fantasyland dragon? They just got it hanging up there? I think they're messing with me. Named Project Kiwi, researchers had developed an incredible bipedal walking animatronic of the Guardians of the Galaxy character, Groot. This Groot was maybe the most impressive animatronic that Disney had ever created. He was capable of smiling, blinking, walking without assistance, standing on one leg, throwing punches, and even dancing. The reactions to Groot were overwhelmingly positive, and guests could not wait to see him in action in the park. However, the description to the video clarified that there were, quote, no immediate plans for use in Disney theme parks. In June of 2023, Disney released another video of the animatronic, this time integrated into a stage show. While not as cool as the prospect of getting to interact with him up close, fans were excited to see the roaming Groot again, and the show setting indicated that Disney had no immediate plans for use in Disney theme parks. On March 10th, 2023, Disney Parks held a panel at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. During the panel, DeMauro introduced several new prototype characters, including a Tinkerbell meet and greet in which a face actor in a remote location could be projected to appear as though they were the canonical size of the fairy. More impressively, Imagineers unveiled a roller skating Judy Hopps animatronic that had the ability to recover after a fall, all on its own. This was a new category of animatronic named Indestructibles, and fans speculated that the roller skating Judy Hopps would first be seen in Shanghai Disneyland's new Zootopia expansion, which was set to open later that year. 9 months later, during the grand opening presentation for the land, DeMauro debuted another roaming animatronic, this time of the character Duke Weaselton. This animatronic was made to appear to push a cart, and after moving to the center of the stage, he was lifted vertically by a cord. The animatronic was then able to plant his feet on the surface of the kiosk and continue his performance. Both the Judy Hopps and Duke Weaselton animatronics fascinated audiences, and both were reported on extensively. However, when the Zootopia expansion
They weren't
opened,
there, were they?
neither were seen in the land. By this point, even casual fans of the Disney parks had begun to notice the pattern. An impressive demonstration, a huge media push boasting the new technology, and then nothing. So many of the new touted projects disappeared, likely due to many of the same operational realities that previous living characters faced. But as Disney's projects kept getting more intriguing, and the broader robotics field presented equally interesting demonstrations, the lack of any meaningful implementation was becoming more and more apparent. There has to be a way for these characters to find a sense of permanency in the parks. So how do you do it? If the goal is to improve the value proposition to operations so that they will actually support these experiences, one way to do that is to tie the living character to a revenue generator. Universal has been doing this for years. Both Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley are packed with moving elements and short character encounters, and the upkeep on these effects has been stellar. This is likely due, in part, to the integration of the interactive wand experience, in which guests can purchase a wand, which allows them to trigger effects throughout the land. These moving elements make the land feel alive for all guests, but they are subsidized by the guests that chose to participate in the upcharge activity. Universal has used a similar strategy with their Super Nintendo worlds, in which guests can purchase a power-up band, which activates effects throughout the land. This might be why the Remy animatronic lasted for so long. On top of him being smaller and more manageable to maintain, Remy was integrated into a restaurant, forcing guests to spend money in order to encounter him. If the revenue generation model isn't cynical enough, another method to make the value proposition better for operations is decreasing the operating cost via automation. A fear of automation has been tied to mechanical beings for centuries, and even Walt admitted that the original animatronics had the benefit of not needing to pay
price point
actors.
of going to the restaurant.
When the Imagineers were experimenting with autonomatronics, they were questioned on whether the technology was intended to replace human performers. At the time, Trowbridge gave a non-committal answer, explaining, quote, "The world of Disney is about delivering stories and creating connections. There's no better way to create those connections than through another human being. So we're going to have to get really, really good at our robotics programs before we're in a position to start replacing our human staff. We'll probably replace our Imagineers with robots before we replace our cast members."
Oh, great line.
This turned out to be a false prediction. In 2018, Disney began quietly replacing several PhotoPass photographers with automated cameras. One of the locations that this affected was the Town Square Theater in the Magic Kingdom. In one of the rehearsal rooms, a new camera box, disguised as a bookshelf, was installed to automatically take photos of guests. This resulted in major backlash for Disney. And within just a few weeks, a Change.org petition acquired over 80,000 signatures,
It's a shame those
resulting in
don't
the
do
halting
anything.
of the automation program and the removal of several of
Oh,
the
it actually did
photoboxes,
something.
including
Go
the one
figure.
in the Town Square Theater. This victory was short-lived, as post-pandemic, the program returned and expanded, replacing more
Hey,
PhotoPass
go figure.
photographers with camera boxes. Around the same time, autonomous interactive characters would re-emerge. On March 1st, 2022, the Galactic Star Cruiser welcomed aboard
The
its
Star
first guest.
Cruiser!
The experience was the most significant integration of Trowbridge's story engine yet, and the 2-night immersive adventure delivered on many of the interactions originally promoted as part of Galaxy's Edge. The Star Cruiser had a few new character experiences, including multiple full-body alien costumes and a new puppeteered astromech droid named SK-620. The most unique character experience offered on board was one that took place within the guest stateroom. On a wall panel, passengers could interact with the logistics droid named D309. This character was fully autonomous. She could understand practically anything guests said, and she could smoothly transition in and out of scripted segments.
What else should we do to disrupt these droid-bolting monsters?
Mess up their communications.
Excellent idea. I can try to access their systems and engage in a little sabotage. Oh, but that has to wait. I should let you start your sleep cycle.
D309 was built on a new intelligent character platform. A Disney research initiative started with the intention of deploying story-driven chatbots. The guest interactions
that's
with D309
ChatGPT.
were influenced by their individual story profile, and the droid would update her behavior and dialogue throughout the experience, depending on both the overall story and the guest's individual actions.
Do you realize the impact you've had?
Sure.
You're right to be proud.
The droid was always labeled as a playtest, even though she was fully integrated into the hotel. D309 was killed when the entire Galactic Star Cruiser was closed in September of 2023. Outside of some technical glitches, D309 was one of the more operationally sustainable aspects of the experience, and the lack of puppeteers allowed the character to interact with guests simultaneously in every room at a very low cost. If operations simply cannot be motivated to operate and maintain living characters consistently in the parks, maybe Imagineering can find ways
It
to
is
justify
pretty cool to
funding new
use like a
appearances
droid for,
themselves.
to make
This
a
means
droid
that living
character like
characters
that.
either need to be lucrative marketing opportunities that help drive more attention to Disney as a whole, or they need to be very attractive to Wall Street. In October of 2023, a new type of bipedal droid began testing in Galaxy's Edge. These cute little robots were named BDX droids, short for Bipedal Dynamic Experiment, or BDEX. This was reportedly the next phase of the bipedal experiments that had begun with Project Kiwi. The BDX droids were a combination of puppetry and autonomous behaviors. Each was given its own personality, and the units were decked out with plenty of tricks and sound effects that
Yeah,
convincingly
it works a
brought the
lot better
robots
with
to
a
life.
robot than anything else. Because it is
The
a
BDX
robot,
droids were the
kinda.
first significant non-humanoid character encounter in Galaxy's Edge since its opening, and they built upon the knowledge that the Imagineers had gained during the height of the Living Character Initiative. The BDX droids
I
were
wouldn't do it as a
canonically
selling
robots,
point, but I
so
think
they
it's a
required
cute little
fewer
thing for a
mechanisms
theme
and
park
did
to
not
work
need
with.
artificial skin. They were small, so if they did break down, they could be carried away by a person. They were easily replicable, and multiple could be operated simultaneously, allowing for more interactions and bringing more life to the area that they inhabited. While their appearances were limited to Imagineering playtests, their practicality allowed them to travel easily. The droids have been spotted at Disneyland, on Disney Cruise Line, in Disneyland Paris, and finally, in July of 2025, they appeared at Disney's Hollywood Studios. It would be amazing if the BDX droids, through the incremental improvements that they showcase, had crossed some sort of threshold that made them attractive to operations. But the reason for their proliferation seems to have less to do with their appeal to operations and their appeal to park guests, and more to do with their appeal to Wall Street.
It's
On
always
March
fucking
18th,
Wall Street.
2024, NVIDIA held GTC.
Yeah, if it was an immersive park experience and there was a little guy, that'd be cute.
NVIDIA has been the biggest winner of the early 2020s AI boom, becoming the first company in history to surpass a market capitalization of $4 trillion. During the conference, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang unveiled Project Groot, a set of models to help developers tackle the many challenges associated with achieving autonomous humanoid robots. During the introduction of the Groot platform, Huang also introduced some special guests. Turns out, the BDX droids were powered by NVIDIA Jetson computers and trained in NVIDIA Isaac Sim. a simulation platform that allows robots to train in a virtual environment. In March of 2025, the BDX droids appeared on the NVIDIA GTC stage once again, this time to announce a new physics engine named Newton, which was a collaboration between Disney Research, Google DeepMind, and NVIDIA. Disney Research had developed a system that they called their robotic character platform, which allowed for artists to animate stylized movements that could then be tested in NVIDIA simulations and, once achievable, performed by an animatronic. This is how the BDX droids and Groot achieved their stylized gaits and expressions. And Disney claimed that the same principles could be applied to robots of various shapes and sizes. The partnership with NVIDIA is extremely lucrative for Disney. Disney Research working in collaboration with, or just being on the same stage as,
we can bring him back.
The world's most valuable company is a dream for investors. This was further proved during the Walt Disney Company's 2025 annual meeting of shareholders.
You need to bring back the big dino.
The BDX droids a dedicated 2-minute segment at the top of the broadcast. These things were still doing limited test runs on a per-park basis, and yet here they are, hanging out with the company's CEO, like they're buds.
How you doing, guys? Great to see you again.
More than simply being for public or investor relations, if Disney's contributions to NVIDIA's robotics platform are as valuable as described, then the BDX droid playtests are not just isolated experiences for the benefit of theme park guests, they are valuable data collection opportunities. The lessons and improvements derived from these experiments are not just going to improve the next animatronic, they will improve a foundational robotics platform being created by the world's most powerful tech companies, potentially bringing forth a humanoid robot revolution, altering the course of human history and transforming the world as we know it forever. So, that's another way to get living characters into a theme park. Just do that, I guess. There is one foolproof strategy on populating the parks with living characters, and that is executive authority. While the Walt Disney Company is a segmented megacorporation with responsibilities scattered across hundreds of divisions, a hierarchy of power does still exist. If an executive truly believes in a project,
I was going to say, Walt would just tell everyone to go fuck
done,
themselves and that he wanted these things in.
Operations dance entirely. These types of executive mandates were standard operating procedure when Walt was alive, and this resulted in the company consistently taking creative risks. A modern, data-driven company
you would never let them shelve the big dino.
To build a robot of Abraham Lincoln. The Imagineers, as an organization, almost certainly would not have decided to build a robot of Abraham Lincoln. But Walt wanted a robot of Abraham Lincoln, and he had the power, the resources, and the people to pull it off. The Lincoln animatronic was a work of art, the quality and morality of which can be argued, but there is no doubt that this was the result of human expression. A human expressing his desire to have a robot of Abraham Lincoln. That is the exact type of risky, selfish, even uncomfortable humanity that the modern corporate machine is basically designed to root out. This is not to say that Walt Disney specifically was the key to achieving these types of feats. If he had survived another 20 years, he probably would not have been laser focused on interactive or roaming animatronics. More than likely, he would have been busy solving murders in the city that he built. This also does not mean that executive authority is never applied today. A confirmed and recent example of executive power leading to a cool thing is the integration of the Stuntronic technology in Disney California Adventure's Avengers Campus. This underbuilt land was almost universally poorly received upon opening, but one of the highlights was the Stuntronic show. Disney Parks chairman Josh D'Amaro has been credited as the reason that the show made it to the parks.
Thank you for greenlighting that, by the way.
You got to take a little risk every once in a while. I knew that was going to work.
Yeah, okay.
This was a legitimate risk, as has been proven, but it is one of those magic moments that requires the support of leadership to pull off. The modern Walt Disney Company is not void of creative talent, and there are reasons to be optimistic about the future of living characters. In May of 2023, Disney announced that Bruce Vaughan would be returning to Imagineering as Chief Creative Officer. Vaughn's passion for and history with living characters is likely to result in new experiences being tested. The question is, will these spaces ever cross that threshold? From being a theme park with an occasional unique character sighting to an environment populated by autonomous, interactive, non-human life. Guests would not have any expectations of this if Disney would not promise it so often, which they are still doing, by the way, now more than ever. Maybe this is the same speculative, future hyping that has been going on for the past 30 years. Or
that
maybe they
giant
feel that they have broken a key
headset is
technological
killing
barrier
me
with their recent projects. But even if Imagineers had all of the executive and operational support possible, even if the technology was perfected and cost was made irrelevant, there was still a key obstacle standing between the parks as we know them and a fully immersive, inhabited story world. The other part of the interaction equation. Us, the guests, human beings. After spending so much time researching and discussing humanity's pursuit of living machines, specifically those whose main purpose is to resemble us, I would love to say that there is something uniquely good about being human. Some way that we are virtuous or skilled, special in a way that a machine could never replicate. But I fear that I can't succinctly or effectively communicate that in a way that doesn't sound desperately hopeful. But what I am confident in is that if humans cannot distinguish ourselves by the ways in which we are great, we will always stand apart in all of the ways that we suck. In 1963, when the first audio animatronic show, The Enchanted Tiki Room, opened at Disneyland, outside of the attraction, an animatronic barker bird named Juan encouraged guests to come inside to see the show. However, the bird was such a spectacle that crowds would gather in front of him, and rather than listening to a suggestion that they enter the building, they would just stand there. This caused such traffic issues that Juan had to be removed. Over 5 decades later, Jake the droid was testing in the same park. This fully autonomous robot attempted to roam Tomorrowland, but he could only move a few feet at a time. Not because the technology limited him, not because operations boxed him in, but because the guests wouldn't let him. People walked in front of him, kids hit him, and kicked him, and climbed on him, and once adults realized that he would stop if they stood in front of him, they would purposefully block his path to allow their family time to gather in order to take a photo. For all of the advancements exhibited by the BDX droids, cast members still need to shield them from guests. And also rain. Even if Mickey Mouse could be a fully autonomous bipedal animatronic, with voice recognition, a character-specific language learning model, and perfect speech synthesis, that Mickey could not shake your hand when you enter the park and walk with you to get an ice cream. Because the costumed Mickey can't do that. He would be mobbed. Walt Disney World had to severely limit their roaming costumed characters years ago, mostly because of crowds and guest behavior. This was a core component of the parks for decades, an aspect that actually made them feel inhabited and alive. And now, it's a rarity. Companies other than Disney have found success populating their parks while recognizing these limitations. On May 22, 2025, Universal Epic Universe became the 3rd theme park to open at Universal Orlando Resort. The new park featured several unique character interactions, but no land felt as alive as How to Train Your Dragon.
You would not be
Isle
able
of
to
Birth.
stop in front
This
of
land
Big
is
Dino to
filled
get a
with dragons.
picture.
There are multiple animatronics throughout the land's exterior, and there is a dedicated toothless meet and greet space. There are also costume dragons, as well as simple mechanical ones brought to life through limited, rudimentary movement. The most advanced character encounters in the land are a set of free-roaming baby dragons, which many believe are themed Boston Dynamics robots. All of the mechanical dragons use canned animations and/or puppeteered movements, and most are out of the reach of guests. Any limitations that the Isle of Berk dragons may have individually is offset by the sheer volume of characters present in the land. The combination of moving elements make Isle of Berk feel truly populated by non-human life, even though none of the techniques used are particularly groundbreaking. This is not to say that Universal has figured it out. They've experienced difficulties trying to get the promised dragon drones to work. All of the animatronics, particularly the baby dragons, are prone to breakdowns, and it is still too early to tell how well these elements will be maintained. But if there is something to take away from the land, it is that achieving the illusion of life does not necessarily require fully autonomous, free-roaming, self-directed character agents. And you can create something that feels immersive and alive without expecting guests to shift their behavior in a major way. Humans, especially theme park guests, have proven to be impatient, selfish, and illogical. And if those aren't the traits that throw a wrench into the proposed living character utopia, then there is one more that might be the most problematic: laziness. All of these interaction methods and techniques that the Imagineers developed assume to some degree that the guest is willingly engaging in the experience. But with social interactions, that engagement is almost always dependent on both parties being alive. A significant number of people that experienced the Galactic Star Cruiser reported growing bored with D309 quickly, while finding the interactions with the human performers rewarding and engaging. Ironically, this might have been one of the most immersive parts of the Star Cruiser, as there's nothing more Star Wars than not wanting to talk to a droid.
It's like a second language to me. I'm a
All right, shut up. I'll take this.
Reports indicate that children did find D309 more engaging. But children also think that costumed characters are real. I guess some adults fall in love with chatbots now, but they can do that at home. For a lot of people, interfacing with a program is just not going to cut it. Many find having a conversation with a cartoon sea turtle an awkward proposition, but the humanity of the performer comes through, and it forces skeptical guests to engage, which can lead to a meaningful interaction.
What do you do for fun on the land? Like, what are your land hobbies, dude?
We like to pick up litter to keep the earth clean.
That's a good recovery from being in your phone.
Turtle Talk with Crush still entertains people to this day, because it's cheap, but also because despite a version of this technology being in everyone's pockets, the human element is timeless. Magic Words with Mickey might have used pre-recorded dialogue, but the illusion of the interaction was achieved through the collaboration of 4 humans, not 0.
That's the coolest thing I learned
with an
today.
Autonomous agent. Once they realize that there is no human behind the curtain, they typically resort to just messing with it for fun. See Fortnite AI Darth Vader.
So, Skibbity Riz is now the key to unlocking the galaxy. Defunctland, you say? Your fascination with obsolete theme parks perplexes me.
Maybe the real world will soon be populated by so many autonomous agents and free-roaming robots that the public's behavior toward them will completely change. But is it not just as likely that if they were to become ubiquitous, we would cease to view them as attractions, therefore defeating the point? I don't know. In reality, even without the promise of living characters being fulfilled, theme parks are as popular as ever. For decades, there was a consistent fear that theme parks were on the brink of irrelevancy, soon to be made obsolete by the internet or video games or virtual reality or whatever. And this did not come to pass. This could be because of the efforts the industry made to implement new technology, but it is just as likely that the emergence of these new mediums made theme parks all the more attractive. Bran Farron predicted this.
I just
want to
go on roller coasters.
Even while working on the
You just have to make some roller coasters. I'm
believed that the parks
being
would
real.
retain their specialness, as they were already a type of virtual world built, quote, at a higher resolution with
I
bricks and
feel
mortar
like
than we can do using bits today.
We've lost
People
the
are now
plot a bit,
bombarded
and
with
it is
an
that people
unending
will come to
stream of
ride
digital
roller
media
coasters.
slop. AI-generated content.
I can't get
scams,
those anywhere
4-hour
else.
video essays about theme parks, the limitless nature of which leads many to crave something physical, something with constraints. That detail, that texture that theme parks have is as much the result of the materials as it is the people. Because the truth is that these places are already inhabited by life. The people that design them, the people that operate them, and the people that visit them. So, what's at the end of the line? I hope it's us. Because in the realm of art, and especially theme parks, the spectacle is often the attempt to build an environment, to pull off an illusion, and most of all, to create a connection. And as long as we are at the helm, the result will be a display of personality, of passion, of imperfection, of ego, of that thing inside of us, our humanity. That is the attraction. It's the whole point. It's the magic. And it always will be. I hope.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due.
This song better not be copyrighted. I swear, if YouTube takes Daisy Daisy,
It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't.
even if it doesn't even need to actually be copyrighted, it just someone just has to say it's copyrighted, and this entire video will get muted.
Bicycle built for two.
That person's name is Bippity Boppity Baptist. And shout out to that, because that's a great name. Bicycle built for two is old enough, I should hope. I should hope too. Did you know about this? Oh, is this Miku? Wow. I cannot believe that this whole saga ended with a Walt Disney animatronic. That's just... You couldn't make that any more poignant if you wrote it. Though I am glad they didn't. If you wrote it, it'd be too on the nose. It would be. People would be like, alright, come on. It's fitting. It's perfect. It's a masterpiece of storytelling. One day Disney will make an Eris animatronic. That's a scary amount of monetary force to be pointed towards me.
Don't you believe it? Regardless of what anyone says, that's not Walt. I'm Walt.
Thank you, Kevin Perjurer, for that wonderful. Oh, the popcorn watermark is showing. What happens when they ask the Walt animatronic how many genders there are? I cannot believe there is live footage of Stitch going, there are 2 genders. And there's also a third, but that's all about chaos and destruction. What we really needed to wind all this down was the Walt Disney like hologram trying to get a girl's number. Did you hear Stitch is going on Joe Rogan? Shut the fuck. What do you mean? What do you mean Stitch is going? What do you mean Stitch is going on Joe Rogan? What? I'm gonna need some more. Just joking your head. You can't just joke about this shit. Have you seen the world you live in? Have you seen the world you live in? It's beyond parody. All right, I'm gonna... I'm gonna set up Akinator because I'm fascinated by that. Especially because I'm going to use lore that only I know, because I made it up in my head. I want to see what happens. I want to see what he can do. Naito reportedly found me, so... Bad news, Akinator is full of ads I can't figure out how to block. Ruins everything. Sensitive content filter, inactive. Actually, maybe we should turn that one on. No, what if it makes it harder to find me? I only found you by trying to manually enter you and seeing a separate entry. No, but I know me better than you do. This will be a great bit. You just have to trust the process. Come on, Firefox. There we go, baby. This is a quick little side project. Oh, but we're gonna need some music. Yeah, there we go. Fernet can help us. All right, let's go. Characters. Yes. Is your character related with Disney? You've been reading. Were you watching along, Akinator? Were you there? No. No. Fuck, am I animated? Cord, am I animated? You'd say so? Okay. What about probably? Yeah, we'll just say yes. It's a character from a Japanese anime. Nope, but you're close. Nope. Motherfucker. Is he on to something? I mean, the Royal Academy does count. But it's not big deal. Probably. Is a character I've only one eye? Nope. Nope. I feel like I'm being insulted. I feel like I'm being microaggressed. No. Yes. No. Not yet. I like my singing. I can sing pretty well. It's not very pink. It's much more pale. I mean, it's pink when I blush. This motherfucker. Nope, not India. Nope. We're not Maury. We're not Iron Mouse. Yes? No, it's Silver. No. 124. No. Fuck! No. We'll give it one more shot. No. Ask about horns. Yes! Ask about horns. No. Yes. Yes. Obviously no. Yes. pretty villainous. Not known for being sad. No. No. Have two. Yes. Be honest with me, Court. You have a pass this time. Be honest with me. Are they big? I can get a zoomie if you want. I can get you a bit more of a. I can get you a better picture. They're not behind popcorn anymore. They're not the biggest, but they're serviceable. They're royally sized. We'll go with a probably. I think this is Naito's job. I can be a gamer. No. Yes. I mean, technically I'm 1,000. Really stuck on my hair. You'd think he'd just know the hair already. No. Yeah, devil horns. I'm not on YouTube very much now. I genuinely want to know. Nope. 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 Holy shit! Holy shit! The motherfucker did it! I was certain we were in the loop and nothing was coming from. I can't believe he did it. I'm in Akinator. We gotta get him a picture. How did he do it? Hang on, I gotta screenshot this. I gotta get... What a way to end the stream. My adrenaline is very high right now. He always gets you. Every time he gets you. All right, we'll give him a yes. Played 5 times? Naito isn't even the first person? Which of you was it? I can add a picture. All right. I'll mess with that on my own time. Who can I send you over to? Anyone live? I like to believe it was the big boobs that did it. Oh, Scarlet's live. It's been a while since we've raided into Scarlet. Alright, I have been your super cute demon princess of hell. Signing off as always. Thank you all so much for enduring with me this fine Tuesday evening. We did it. We beat Kevin Perjurer. We got to witness technical necromancy. And we played Akinator, which was very exciting. I think I've officially made it. I think this is how I know. With that said, I will see you all Thursday for miscellaneous project. Miscellaneous game. Thursday is a holiday. Thursday is a holiday. Thursday is a holiday. I will be out. I will not see you all Thursday. I will see you Saturday for miscellaneous undetermined project. I am looking forward to that. Remember that stream attendance is mandatory on pain of death. And have a lovely night. You are dismissed. Bye-bye. Night, Sin. I see you, motherfucker.